Chapter 480. Don't. Nangong Wuk's heart shuddered and his legs trembled. He was afraid that the Netherworld woman would get angry. Once this woman got angry, even 10 Nangong wands wouldn't be able to withstand her rage. Nangong Wuk took a step forward and stood in front of the Netherworld woman. He looked at her with a sincere gaze. It's fine. If you like it, then eat more. My younger sister was just joking with you. You are so beautiful. So how could my younger sister scold you? She loves making friends with beautiful people. Nangong Wuk wore a flattering smile on his face. He blinked his eyes and looked at you with a sincere gaze. Yu's mouth was covered in oil, but her face was expressionless. She shot a glance at Nangong Wuk and furrowed her brows in disgust. She turned her head away and continued to eat from the jar. After Nangong Wuk appeased you, he heaved a sigh of relief. Nangong Wan widened her eyes and looked at Nangong Wuk in disbelief. This idiot was actually helping an outsider? Who was joking? Did this woman eat my Buddha jumps over the wall soup? It was worth 10,000 crystals. She glared at Nangong Wuk, who turned his head and smiled bitterly. He rubbed Nangong Wan's face. She is so beautiful. If she likes it, then let her eat it. I will treat you, Nangong Wuk said with a smile. Old Boo, give me another bowl of Buddha jumps over the wall soup. After Nangong Wuk spoke, he turned his head and looked at Bu Fong, who was leaning against the door. Bu Fong nodded, turned around, and entered the kitchen. Since these two women didn't cause any trouble, he decided to forget about it. Nangong Wan wasn't an unreasonable person, but she couldn't help but snort angrily in her heart as she sat on her seat. You ate happily. The more she ate, the more excited she became. She was too lazy to care about Nangong Wan and Nangong Wuk. Nangong Wuk, if you don't give me a reasonable explanation when we go back, I will beat you up, Nangong Wan said angrily as she waved her fist. A reasonable explanation. I am afraid that I will scare you. Nangong Wuk smiled bitterly. With a lingering fear in his heart, he looked at Nethery in the distance and sighed. After a while, Bu Fong finished cooking another bowl of Buddha jumps over the wall soup. However, this time, he didn't let you carry it out. Instead, he personally carried the porcelain jar out of the kitchen. After placing the jar in front of Nangong Wan, he pulled out a chair and sat opposite her. He turned his head to look at you, who was holding a porcelain jar and pouring the thick soup into her mouth. The corner of his mouth twitched. Nangong Wan seemed to be still angry. She was panting with rage as she ate the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. However, as she ate, her anger dissipated and she immersed herself in the delicacy. Nangong Wuk heaved a sigh of relief. He leaned against the chair and looked at the two of them with a bitter smile. Bu Fong looked at him with interest. Old Bu, I have something to tell you. The area where your store is located is the newest area to be developed. Therefore, it is considered a backward industrial area of the Nangong family. Recently, the Lin and Zhang families have been targeting our Nangong family. Therefore, they might start with these industries. I hope that you will be careful. Nangong Wuk said. Bu Fong was taken aback. He nodded his head. According to Nangong Wuk, someone would come to cause trouble. Oh, I understand. Bu Fong replied indifferently. Currently, he wasn't afraid of someone causing trouble. Therefore, he didn't take Nangong Wuk's words to heart. Currently, he wasn't worried about someone causing trouble. Instead, he was worried about how to spread the fame of his store. It wasn't an easy task to spread the fame of his store throughout the entire Heavenly Mist City. Heavenly Mist City was too big. It was much bigger than the Light Wind Imperial City. Even back in the Light Wind Imperial City, Fong Fong's little store's fame was only spread out by chance. It could even be said that in the entire Light Wind Empire, Fong Fong's little store's fame wasn't that prominent. Now that he was in the Heavenly Mist City, it was even more difficult to spread his fame. Let me ask you something. Bu Fong looked at Nangong Wuk. He felt that since Nangong Wuk was the successor of a great family, he should know some methods to spread his fame. What is it? Nangong Wuk was startled. He looked at Bu Fong in puzzlement. Could it be that Bu Fong wanted him to take this terrifying woman away? If that was the case, he would turn around and leave without a second thought. He would never come back to the Cloud Mist restaurant again. He believed that Bu Fong wouldn't do such a crazy thing. Moreover, Buffon's question wasn't about this. If I want my store's fame to spread throughout the entire heavenly mist city, do you know any way to do so? Buffon asked earnestly. After Buffon asked this question, Nangong Wuk sank into deep thought. Thump, you who was at the side, had finally finished eating the entire jar of Buddha jumps over the wall soup. She wiped her red lips with her slender and white hand and placed the jar on the table. A dull thud resounded. Nangong Wuk, who had sunk into deep thought, jumped in fright. After eating and drinking to her heart's content, the Netherworld woman was very satisfied. She stood up and walked towards the path understanding tree while swaying her long black hair. In the end, she returned and sat beside Lord Dog. Although the path understanding tree's grade wasn't high, the aura it emitted made Lord Go and the Netherworld woman feel very comfortable. I do have a way. My Nangong family is one of the top families in the Heavenly Mist City. We have many businesses, so it's easy for us to spread our name. Many alchemy grandmasters were promoted through our businesses. Their fame has already spread throughout the Heavenly Mist City. Nangong Wuk said. Buffon's eyes lit up. Can we promote the store? It can be done, but it will be very difficult. The Nangong family's businesses are mainly related to elixirs. If we promote our alchemy grandmasters, we will be able to attract a lot of people. If we promote the store Old Boo, you should know how awkward the restaurant business is in the Heavenly Mist City, Nangong Wuk said helplessly. It wasn't that he didn't want to help Buffon, but the price of promoting the store was too high. Moreover, there might not be anyone who would buy it. This gave him a headache. Buffon furrowed his brows. Did he really have to set up a stinky tofu stall in a crowded place to attract people's attention and make a name for himself? The amount of work required was too great. Buffon was very lazy, so he didn't want to do it. Brother, if I remember correctly, the Magical Hand Conference is about to start, right? Nangong Wan, who was eating happily, suddenly said. Nangong Wuk was taken aback. He immediately grabbed Buffon's hand in delight. Old Boo, Little Wan is right. You can participate in a Magical Hand Conference, Nangong Wuk said happily. Nangong Wuk was pleasantly surprised. With your culinary skills and your miraculous dishes, it is enough for you to stand out in the grand ceremony. This grand ceremony will be watched by everyone in the Pill Palace. Once you obtain a good ranking, your name will definitely spread throughout the entire Heavenly Mist City. No, it will spread throughout the entire Pill Palace. Magical Hand Conference? Buffon asked doubtfully. He calmly took his hand out of Nangong Wuk's hand. It is a competition organized by the Pill Palace. There are no restrictions on the number of participants, but most of them are alchemists. Of course, there are also some doctors and poison masters. Old Boo, as a chef, you're also a master. You can try it. Don't you want to make your store famous? That's perfect, Nangong Wuk said. As long as you can get into the top 10, the competition will be broadcasted to the entire Pill Palace through a special projection spirit array. At that time, everyone will know you. When the time comes, you can advertise your store during the competition, and it will become very popular. Nangong Wuk's words made sense, and he was speechless. Buffon's eyes lit up. Wasn't this the same as advertising in his previous world? Hey, Nangong Wuk, are you a pig? Those who can participate in the Magical Hand Conference are all monstrous geniuses of the Pill Palace. Even 3 Clouds alchemists will participate. Do you think that Ownerbu can get into the top 10 with his culinary skills? Do you really think that alchemists are trash? Nangong Wan glanced at the 2 people who were laughing foolishly at the side and couldn't help but pour cold water on them. It was true that Ownerbu's dishes were delicious, and they even had the same effects as elixirs. However, as an alchemist, Nangong Wan had her own judgment about the effects of his dishes. Even the most delicious and expensive Buddha jumps over the wall soup was only comparable to a 9th grade elixir. It was much weaker than a 1-mark spirit elixir, let alone a 2-mark or 3-mark spirit elixir. The effects of those elixirs would definitely be superior to the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. If the Buddha jumps over the wall soup couldn't compare, how could Ownerbu compete with those powerful alchemists? Egg-fried rice or sweet and sour ribs? There was no way to compare them. Nangong Wuk also calmed down. After thinking about it, he realized that Nangong Wuk's words made sense. He gave Bufong a helpless expression. However, Bufong was very calm. The corners of his mouth curled up, and he looked at Nangong Wuk with a burning gaze. How can I participate in the magical hand conference? Egg fried rice, sweet and sour ribs, or Buddha jumps over the wall soup? The corners of Bufong's mouth curled up. You guys haven't seen a real elixir cuisine. You guys don't know anything about the truth. Chapter 481. Nangong Wuk left. Now that he had become the head of the Nangong family, there were many things that he needed to do. The reason why he rushed to the Cloud Mist restaurant was because he was afraid that Nangong Wan would accidentally provoke the Netherworld woman. Now that everything was progressing in a good direction, he naturally had to leave as soon as possible. Bufong didn't send him off. He sat on his seat and sank into deep thought. According to what Nangong Wuk said, if he wanted to spread the fame of the Cloud Mist restaurant, the Nangong family alone wouldn't be enough. If that was the case, then he would have to participate in a magical hand conference. But how should he participate? Should he register? After returning to his senses, Bufong looked at Nangong Wan, who was happily eating beside him. He asked, if I want to participate in a magical hand conference, should I register? Also, where is the registration location? Nangong Wan put down the porcelain jar. Her face was slightly rosy because of the heat from the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Her beautiful face became even more tender and beautiful, and she emitted an enchanting aura. Ownerbu, are you really going to participate in a magical hand conference? Actually, Nangong Wan didn't think that Bufong's chances of winning in the conference were high. After all, Ownerbu was a chef, not an alchemist. How could he compete with high-grade spirit pills refined by high-grade alchemists? That's right, I want to spread the fame of my store, Bufong said without any hesitation. He was really serious about it. When Nangong Wan saw Bufong's resolute expression, she knew that it was impossible for her to get Bufong to give up on this idea. Thus, she only hesitated for a moment before she charmingly smiled. If Ownerbu wants to participate in the conference, then he won't be participating as an alchemist. Instead, he will be participating as a person with special gifts. In Heavenly Mist City, the registration location for people with special gifts is in the south of the city. If Ownerbu wants to go, then I will bring you there tomorrow morning, Nangong Wan said with a smile. Her beautiful eyes seemed to contain a smile that wasn't a smile as she looked at Bufong. Going to the south of the city to register? Heavenly Mist City had even set up a registration point. Bufong didn't know where the registration point was, so he couldn't refuse Nangong Wan's request, so he could only nod. All right, let's go together tomorrow morning. Nangong Wan's beautiful eyes lit up when she heard Bufong agree. Nangong Wan took out several high-grade crystals from her bosom and handed them to Bufong before leaving the Cloud Mist restaurant in a cheerful mood. After Nangong Wan left, it was finally time for the store to close. Bufong stood up and closed the bronze door. Putting away the porcelain jar on the table, he turned around and walked toward the kitchen. Yu's pitch-black eyes stared at Bufong until he disappeared into the kitchen. Only then did she turn around. Beside him, Little Black was sound asleep, sleeping soundly. The Netherworld woman stood up and put down the chair. With a wave of her hand, the Netherworld ship appeared once again and smashed into the ground, giving rise to a strong gale. The gale caused the fur on the Lord Go's body to flutter. Lord Dog, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly opened his eyes. He angrily glanced at Nethery, who had climbed into the Netherworld ship. This lass, can't you let the dog sleep properly? Bufong returned to the kitchen and practiced his knife technique for a while. Bufong's progress with the Overlord 13 blades was very slow, and it was a stark contrast to the meteor knife technique, which allowed him to quickly master it. Bufong was also helpless. He knew that he couldn't rush this kind of matter. A good chef, an experienced chef, could stay in the kitchen for dozens of years and spend their entire life honing their knife technique and cooking skills. A truly good knife technique could only be honed with time. After practicing for a while, Bufong returned to his room. After taking a bath, he laid on his bed and fell asleep. His breathing quickly became even. It was a pitch-black night. Two bright moons hung in the sky and emitted a cold radiance. It was as if a thin veil was spread on the ground. In the area where the Nangong family sold multi-taste fasting pills, dozens of people clad in black robes quietly appeared. These people were all wearing masks, and their faces couldn't be seen clearly. However, their bodies emitted a powerful aura. The person leading them was a divine physique echelon expert who could communicate with heaven and earth. This is one of the Nangong family's properties. According to the master's orders, destroy all the shops here so that they won't be able to open for business tomorrow. Yes, all the black-robed people replied in unison. Then, the figures of these people burst out and scattered in all directions, moving in pairs. True chi surged up, and with a loud explosion, an elixir store was directly blown up. Bricks and stones flew in all directions and fell all over the ground. A black-robed man leaped high into the air and slashed down with a long saber in his hand. Saber chi swept out and cut the elixir store in half. There were dozens of elixir shops in this area. However, they were all destroyed tonight. Some of the elixir shops still had some low-grade elixirs. Because the buildings were destroyed, these elixirs rolled out and were crushed by the black-robed person. The two black-robed people sped along and suddenly saw a restaurant. Isn't this an elixir shop? Why is there such a big restaurant here? The two black-cloaked men were puzzled as they looked at each other suspiciously. This restaurant building, are we going to destroy it? I wonder if there are people living in it. One of the black-robed people said. They were somewhat hesitant. They dared to destroy elixir shops because no one lived in them. The owners of the elixir shops would collect the valuable elixirs at night and bring them home. They would leave the elixir shops behind. As for the restaurant, it was hard to say. Perhaps the owner lived in it? Who cares? What if this restaurant is also one of the Nangong family's properties? We might be able to make a great contribution. One of the black-robed people clenched his teeth and said coldly. After that, the two of them didn't hesitate anymore. Their true energy soared into the sky, and their gazes became sharper. They activated their true energy and rushed toward the building. Buzz, blade energy, and sword energy wreaked havoc. With a tyrannical aura, they attacked and wanted to completely destroy the restaurant. However, soon after, the two black-robed people were dumbfounded. After they attacked, they didn't see the restaurant collapse. Could it be that their attack was fake? The restaurant was still intact. Every brick and tile was neat and tidy. The restaurant stood in the middle of this area, and it seemed very out of place. Let's try again. The two black-robed people looked at each other and nodded. With great tacit understanding, they launched another attack. This time, they exerted 100% of their strength. They wanted to destroy the restaurant with absolute certainty. An invisible broadsword slashed down with a loud rumble. This time, the black-robed person saw it clearly. After his true energy blade slashed down, it stopped several meters away from the restaurant. It couldn't move forward at all. What was going on? Why was it like this? The two black-robed people widened their eyes. Their faces under their masks were filled with disbelief. Could it be that there was a magic array here? However, they didn't feel the aura of a magic array. I'll help you. The other black-robed person didn't believe it. He angrily snorted, and his true energy soared into the sky. It seemed as if he had turned into a huge flaming meteor that smashed down from the sky. Its power was astonishing. In the distance, the commander of the black-robed people furrowed his brows. What the hell were those two doing? They made such a huge commotion. Were they afraid that people wouldn't know that they were destroying the Nangong family's property? He moved his feet and was about to rush out. However, just as he took a step forward, his whole body stiffened. Those who disturb people's dreams will die. The two black-robed people looked at the peerless beauty standing on the roof in fear. Her long black hair seemed to flicker under the illumination of the two bright moons. However, the ice-cold pressure that filled the air made it difficult for them to breathe. The true energy blade and the flaming meteor smashed down. Before they could get close, the woman waved her hand in the air. It was as if she was wiping away a stain. The two black-robed people's attacks disappeared just like that. In the next instant, The two black-robed people's eyes were filled with fear. Their black hair stuck out from their necks. They only had enough time to see the woman on the roof disappear before they completely lost consciousness. You slowly retracted her black hair and moved her long and fair legs. She tapped the ground with her sparkling feet and turned around. She just happened to meet the black-robed leader's gaze, which was almost suffocating. "Scram, or die," you said expressionlessly. Chapter 482. Scram or Die. His voice wasn't loud, but it was extremely clear in this pitch-black and quiet night. It was as if it was ringing in the ears of the black-robed commander. There was no killing intent, only an ice-cold indifference. He looked at his two subordinates, helplessly lying on the ground. Fresh blood flowed out and dyed the ground red. The pungent smell of fresh blood permeated the air, causing everyone's hair to stand on end. "Who are you? Aren't you being a little too ruthless?" Suppressing the fear in his heart, the black-robed commander coldly said. A light flashed in his hand, and a long silver spear appeared. If there were people from heavenly Mist City here, they would be able to recognize this person's identity upon seeing this long spear. The commander of the Zhang family, Silver Spear Zhang He. He was a famous expert in heavenly Mist City. He had broken through one of the Supreme Being's shackles, and his battle prowess was extraordinary. However, such an expert had a grave expression on his face at this moment. The hand that held the silver spear seemed to be drenched in cold sweat. The pressure that the barefooted beauty with long, black hair gave him was too great. This woman was very strong. She was definitely very strong. Yu's face was ice cold. She was always this cold to others. Her pitch-black eyes started to move, and the white of her eyes were completely black. "If you don't scram, then die." An indifferent voice resounded in the dark night. Her black hair fluttered even though there was no wind. It suddenly spread out, and it seemed to block the moonlight. Zhang He was enraged, and he let out a long roar. The pores on his body opened up, and true energy gushed out. It seemed to transform into a thin layer of mist that enveloped his body. A spear pierced out, and it tore through the sky. It was like a beam of light that flashed through the night. A chain of vital energy appeared behind him, swaying continuously. Yu's pitch-black eyes were deep and bottomless. She tapped the ground with her sparkling white feet, and her figure flickered like a ghost. That silver spear pierced out, but it was directly swallowed by a wave of darkness. Drip! Her black dress fluttered, and Yu's thumb tapped on the ground. It seemed to have tapped on the gravel, making a slight sound. At this moment, her long hair was like a waterfall. Zhang He maintained the posture of thrusting his spear. His entire body was completely covered by her pitch-black hair. Yu's slender hands rested on her waist. She was expressionless as she turned her head slightly and looked behind her. Instantly, the strands of hair began to move, tightening and sliding. "Kacha!" The sound of bones breaking rang out. Zhang He couldn't even let out a groan before he was killed. Swoosh! Her hair retracted and spread behind her back. Her long hair reached her waist and was exceptionally beautiful. The moonlight shone on her once again, illuminating her breathtakingly beautiful face. "Commander is dead?" The faces of the black-robed people in the surroundings were instantly filled with terror. Some of them did not say anything and just turned around and ran. This woman is a demon. It was a demon that had crawled out from hell. Hair could kill. If she wasn't a demon, then what was she? However, after running away for a few steps, those people widened their bloodshot eyes and discovered that their feet were wrapped by black hair. The hair expanded and completely swallowed them. Dozens of experts, including a divine physique echelon expert who had broken through one of the Supreme Being's shackles, were killed in a few breaths. If this scene spread out, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. Corpses were strewn all over the ground. Yu strode forward with her slender legs, stepping in the air as she returned to the roof of the Cloud Mist restaurant. She raised her hand, and the moonlight shone on her hand, making it look hazy. It looked like a white jade. She waved her hand, and a formless fluctuation spread out. The corpses lying on the ground crumbled one after another, turning into dust and dispersing. Only blood was left on the ground, and a pungent smell of blood permeated the air. The darkness in her eyes disappeared, and the white of her eyes became white once again. The netherworld woman expressionlessly scanned her surroundings. In the next moment, her figure gradually became indistinct and disappeared. Within the store, the Lord Go's nose twitched slightly. He opened his drowsy eyes and shot a glance at you, who was crawling into the netherworld ship. He asked in a gentle and magnetic voice, "Is everything settled?" You was startled. She turned her head to look at the Lord Go and nodded. "With you here, Lord Go, I can relax a lot. It would be even better if I didn't have to fight over the sweet and sour ribs with the Lord Go." The netherworld woman opened her red lips. With a chuckle, he climbed into the netherworld ship. This girl. The Lord Go lazily rolled his eyes and went back to sleep. Early the next morning, Bufong was woken up by the miserable cries of pigs being slaughtered. Bufong got up from his bed and rubbed his drowsy eyes. He looked around in confusion. What happened? He got off his bed and walked toward the place where the miserable cries were coming from. He went to the window and looked into the distance. The ground was filled with crushed stones and shattered elixirs. A large number of elixir store owners were kneeling on the ground and weeping bitterly. What happened? Bufong opened his eyes wide. How could so many elixir stores collapse in a single night? The elixir store owners were the most miserable ones. Some of them relied on their elixir stores to make money and support their families. They had to spend a lot of money to rent their stores from the Nangong family. Now that something like this had happened, it was a huge blow to them. Some of them were sighing in despair, while others were weeping bitterly. Some of the elixir store owners, who were extremely angry, were pounding on the restaurant's bronze gate. They probably thought that the culprit was Bufong. The elixir stores in the surroundings had all collapsed, and only this restaurant was still standing. It was impossible for them not to misunderstand the situation. The people of the Nangong family quickly rushed over. They were led by an elder of the Nangong family. This elder had a profound look in his eyes. After asking for some information, he fixed his gaze on the restaurant. The bloodstains on the ground attracted their attention. What on earth happened here last night? The rich, true energy in the blood indicated that the person who bled had a powerful cultivation. Perhaps, as long as they found the person who bled, they would be able to find out the truth. However, the elder's guess was that the Lin and Zhang families were the culprits. After all, such rumors had already spread. Nangong Wan and Nangong Wuk also rushed over. How could they not come over to take a look at such a major incident? The destruction of one of the Nangong family's businesses wasn't a trivial matter. Nangong Wan was quite resourceful. She comforted the weeping elixir store owners and promised that she would refund them the rent. Only then did the store owners relax. Nangong Wan's elixir store was also destroyed. However, she knew that this incident had nothing to do with owner Bu. It was definitely done by the Lin or Zhang families. They had to find out the truth of this matter. Bufong changed his clothes and went downstairs. He opened the bronze door and leaned against it. Nangong Wan and Nangong Wuk walked over and greeted him. Many of the store owners were still glaring at him. Their gazes made Bufong frown slightly. "Owner Bu, we know that this incident has nothing to do with you. Don't worry, we will find the culprits. Our Nangong family won't suffer such a great loss for nothing." Nangong Wuk patted his chest and promised Bufong. Nangong Wan was in a bad mood. After all, her elixir store was also destroyed. She wanted to come over and repair it today. She didn't expect that such a thing would happen. "Owner Bu, the registration for the Magical Hand Conference is in the southern part of the city. Are you free now? I'll go with you," Nangong Wan said as she took a deep breath. "I'm not free now. I haven't eaten breakfast yet," Bufong said. Nangong Wan's face stiffened. She was somewhat speechless. "If you want to eat, come in and have a taste. Just remember to leave some crystals," Bufong said. He then turned around and walked toward the kitchen. Nangong Wuk and Nangong Wan's eyes lit up. When Nangong Wuk saw you climb out of the netherworld ship, he acted like a mouse that had seen a cat. He turned around and left. Nangong Wan was somewhat baffled by his actions. You climbed out expressionlessly. She yawned and stood up straight. The netherworld ship buzzed as it was put away. Nangong Wan's gaze was fixed on you. Suddenly, her pupils constricted. You combed her hair, causing it to fall like a waterfall. A dense smell of blood spread out from her hair. A drop of ice-cold blood stained Nangong Wan's face. She subconsciously raised her hand and wiped it off, leaving behind a blood-red hand. Chapter 483. Was this blood coming from that woman's body? Why was there blood? What did that woman do? Nangong Wan's heart was filled with doubts. She looked at Nethery's hair with a solemn expression. She had a feeling that this beautiful woman wasn't simple, and it wasn't just because she was afraid of her. Just the aura emanating from her body was enough to make Nangong Wan's heart palpitate. After Nethery combed her hair, she raised her head lazily and looked at Nangong Wan. She seemed a little surprised as to why this woman kept staring at her. However, Nangong Wan didn't pay much attention to her. She turned around and went to the kitchen, looking at it expectantly. She knew that it was time for breakfast. The fragrance in the kitchen was very rich, and it didn't take long for it to drift out. Nangong Wan was sitting on a chair. Her sitting posture was quite elegant. Her slender, white, and beautiful legs were crossed over her other leg, exuding a mature charm. Sitting beside her was Yu, who couldn't wait to eat. From time to time, she would turn her head to look at the kitchen. She looked like a foodie. What made Nangong Wan even more speechless was the fact that on the other side of her, there was a black dog that had appeared out of nowhere. It was also slapping its paws on the table and sticking out its tongue, waiting for its breakfast. Nangong Wan, who was sitting between a woman and a dog, felt awkward. What the hell? Soon, a rich aroma wafted out from the kitchen, and a slender and thin figure walked out from the shadows of the kitchen. He was holding a steaming hot dish in his hands. This person was Bufong. Bufong raised his brows when he saw this strange combination. He didn't pay much attention to it. Blackie, your sweet and sour dragon ribs. You, your dragon blood rice. Bufong placed the dishes in front of you and Blackie. He glanced at Nangong Wan and went to the kitchen. After a short while, he came out with 2 steamers of steamed buns. These are soup dumplings. They taste good and are suitable for breakfast. After Bufong gave Nangong Wan a steamer, he also found a place to sit down and prepare to start eating. Now, in the restaurant, Bufong would occasionally study some new dishes. This soup dumpling was the latest dish that he had researched. Actually, it couldn't be considered research. After all, he had made it in his previous life. Xylong Bao was different from ordinary steamed buns. The skin of the steamed buns was smooth and light. After being steamed, it seemed to become transparent. There was no thick soup inside like the soup dumplings, but it was full of fragrance. That was because of the filling of the steamed buns. The delicious steamed buns were so delicious that one wouldn't get tired of them, even after eating more than 10 steamers. It was just right for breakfast. Nangong Wan widened her eyes as she looked at the steamed buns in front of her. The steamed buns were giving off a delicious aroma that attracted her. The others around him had already begun to gorge themselves on the food. The dog was chewing on the porcelain plate, smacking its lips nonstop. That ice-cold woman grabbed the rice with her hands and kept stuffing it into her mouth. Her table manners were simply terrifying. It's really delicious. Nangong Wan used her chopsticks to pick up a soft Xylong Bao and gently bit into it. The skin of the steamed bun was immediately bitten open, and a delicious aroma surged out and circulated in her mouth. The taste of the filling of the steamed buns instantly surged out and caused her whole body to tremble. As soon as the steamed bun entered her stomach, it was so delicious that she couldn't help but moan. Bufong was already eating happily. In fact, he could have prepared a dipping sauce, but Bufong was too lazy to do so, so he didn't make it. If a special dipping sauce was added to the Xylong Bao, its taste would be extremely delicious. This time, the Lord Go learned his lesson. When you licked the last grain of dragon blood rice in her mouth, he also finished the sweet and sour ribs. He stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. He looked at you and let out a complacent laugh. Then, the Lord Go ran back to the path understanding tree and went back to sleep. Eating, sleeping, and eating. This was the daily routine of the Lord Go. Yu, who had finished her dragon blood rice, looked at the Xylong Bayo in Bufong's cage. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Bufong didn't choose to open for business. Instead, he closed the bronze gate and left the store with Nangong Wan. They were going to the southern part of the city to register for the Magical Hand Conference. Every clan had a fixed number of participants, and those who signed up were usually some rogue cultivators or some unknown doctors or poison masters. Alchemists always looked down on these kinds of people, as they believed that they walked the path of unorthodox cultivation. This was indeed the case. Even the best doctors couldn't compare to a spirit pill. However, there would always be many doctors and poison masters participating in the Magical Hand Conference. If they managed to get into the top 50, they would be able to gain a great deal of popularity. Being able to gain a great deal of popularity was not a bad thing for them. The southern part of the city wasn't very flourishing. Heavenly Mist City was the same as most big cities. The center of the city was the most flourishing area, and the farther one went from the center, the more barren it became. In the center of the city, one could see many tall bronze buildings. However, once one reached the southern part of the city, the number of tall buildings would decrease. Most of the houses were low, and they were old. Nangong Wan seemed to be quite familiar with the southern part of the city. She led Bufong through a few alleys, and as if she was walking through a maze, they arrived in front of a tall building in the southern part of the city. This is the registration point. Every year, the registration point for people with special gifts is here, Nangong Wan said. Bufong looked at the building, narrowed his eyes, and nodded his head. This was because he saw many people in strange clothes walking in and out of the building. The aura emitted by these people wasn't strong, but it was very strange. Some of them were wrapped in gray robes, and they emitted a gloomy aura. Some of them wore white robes, had a beard, and had a peaceful expression on their faces. They were poison masters and doctors, people who didn't have any talent in alchemy, and they had opened up their own domains. Nangong Wan led Bufong into the building. The interior of the building was unexpectedly bustling with noise and excitement. There were many poison masters and doctors. Bufong was a little dazzled by what he saw. After squeezing through the crowd for a long time, they finally arrived in front of a small house. Owner Bu, this is the registration point. The old man inside is an acquaintance of mine, Nangong Wan said with a smile. She glanced at Bufong before pushing open the door and entering the house. Bufong followed her inside, and he saw a one-eyed old man reading a book in the room. When the old man noticed that someone had entered, he raised his head. "Miss Nangong, why are you here?" The one-eyed old man stood up in surprise. Nangong Wan was an alchemist of the Nangong family. The one-eyed old man recognized her, but he didn't understand why she would come here. This was the registration point for people with special gifts. "Uncle Fu, this is a friend of mine. He wants to participate in the Magical Hand Conference," Nangong Wan introduced. The one-eyed old man was taken aback for a moment. Then he understood why Nangong Wan would come here. "Fine. Tell me your name, cultivation level, and occupation." The one-eyed old man returned to his seat and took out a thick registration book. As he flipped through the book, he asked Bufong. "Bufong, cultivation level, 9th grade supreme being, occupation." "Chef," Bufong replied expressionlessly. The one-eyed old man nodded his head and started to write down the information. "Occupation, poison master?" "Huh?" The one-eyed old man raised his head and looked at Bufong in surprise. This young man was fair and clean, and he didn't look like a poison master who made himself look like a ghost. Nangong Wan's mouth twitched, and she said, "Uncle Fu, my friend isn't a poison master. He's a chef." "Chef? Wait, are you talking about the chef who cooks in the kitchen?" The one-eyed old man was taken aback, and he looked at Nangong Wan with a strange expression. A chef also came to register for the Magical Hand Conference. Was this a joke? He, the one-eyed Uncle Fu, was in charge of the registration of people with special gifts. He had seen countless poison masters, doctors, and even massage masters. However, he had never seen a chef before. Other people took part in the competition to use medicine, But you took part in the competition to use dishes? Cooking on the stage? Just thinking about it made him feel that it was somewhat comical. Young Miss Nangong, are you making fun of me? What's the point of a chef participating in this conference? I won't allow him to register. The one-eyed old man felt that Nangong Wan and Bu Fong were making fun of him. When he heard that he wasn't allowed to register, Bu Fong furrowed his brows. Is there a rule that says chefs can't participate in the conference? Bu Fong asked. The one-eyed old man was taken aback. There really wasn't such a rule. When people with special gifts signed up, there wasn't any rule that stated that they couldn't participate in the conference. But a chef, this was too absurd. Then register for me. The outcome is up to me. What does it have to do with you? Bu Fong calmly said. The one-eyed old man raised his brows. This lad was a little domineering. The one-eyed old man coldly smiled and put down the pen in his hand. He looked at Bu Fong and said, You are really confident. You can register, but after the registration, there will be an examination. You need to show that you are qualified to participate in the conference, or else get lost. Chapter 484. The attitude of the lad in front of him made Fu Ba feel somewhat uncomfortable. What did he mean by the outcome being decided by him? He was in charge of the registration and was also the person in charge of the preliminary selection. There were more people with special abilities than alchemists. After all, there weren't many people in this world who could become alchemists. However, there were many people who couldn't become alchemists. Those who couldn't become alchemists would change their profession and become poison masters or doctors. If so many poison masters and doctors came to him to register, and all of them chose to participate in the competition, wouldn't he have to record the names of the participants for the entire day? Wouldn't the ceremony be in a mess? A chef. To put it nicely, he was a chef, but to put it bluntly, he was just a chef. Why would a chef join the fun? Moreover, how many chefs were there in the heavenly Mist City? If there were really such amazing chefs, the restaurants in the heavenly Mist City wouldn't have closed down because of the fasting pill. Compared to alchemists, chefs were innately inferior. Teacher, I heard that young Miss Nangong has come. Just as the two of them were at each other's throats, the door was suddenly pushed open and a figure walked in from the outside excitedly. It was a young and handsome lad with bright eyes. He seemed extremely spirited. He was Fu Ba's disciple, a young doctor with superb medical skills. Young Miss Nangong, long time no see. You are still as charming and beautiful as ever. When the young man saw Nangong Wan standing in the room, a trace of passion flashed in his eyes. Nangong Wan nodded with a smile and didn't say much. Uncle Fu, why don't you register my friend? He really wants to participate in a magical hand conference this time. The one-eyed old man glanced at the expressionless Bu Fong and sneered inwardly when he recalled the arrogant words Bu Fong had said. I can register him, but I have to be fair. If young Miss Nangong's friend can't even pass my selection, then don't blame me for rejecting him. Zheng bring this young master to participate in the selection with the fifth squad. The young man was taken aback. He looked at Bu Fong in surprise and nodded. Come with me, the young man said. Then, he led Bu Fong out of the house. Nangong Wan didn't follow him. Instead, she left the house with the one-eyed old man and walked toward the spectators' area. Do you see that seat? Walk over there and tell the person in charge that you are participating in the qualifier. They will arrange it for you. But I say, what is a chef like you doing here? The young man glanced at Bu Fong and said somewhat speechlessly, no matter how amazing a chef was, how amazing could he be? Physicians and poison masters could be considered as derivative occupations of alchemists. At the very least, there was hope for them to surpass alchemists. You're just a chef, and you want to challenge an alchemist? Aren't you afraid of being laughed at? I'm afraid that you are the first person in history to participate in a magical hand conference as a chef. I hope that you will be able to pass the selections. Otherwise, if you can't even pass the selections, you should go home, wash up, and sleep. The young man sneered. It wasn't that he looked down on Bu Fong. It was just that his idea was too bold. Bu Fong glanced at the young man and didn't say anything. There were some things that didn't need to be explained, and Bu Fong didn't feel like explaining it to him. Moreover, The young man didn't have the qualifications to make him explain. These people, they knew nothing about the occupation of chefs. As he looked at Bufong, who was walking toward Bufong, a sneer appeared in the young man's eyes. He turned around and walked toward the spectators' area. Nangongwan was still there. Are you here to participate in a qualifier? Tell me your occupation and stand to the side. An examiner indifferently glanced at Bufong and said, Bufong, chef, Bufong said. The examiner was startled. He furrowed his brows and said, Speak clearly. What kind of chef are you? Chef, Bufong said, as if he was looking at an idiot. The examiner was slightly dumbfounded. He had seen doctors and poison masters before, but this was the first time he had seen a chef. Where did this kid come from? Since he was able to participate in the test, it was obvious that he had passed Uncle Fu's registration. How was he going to arrange the test? The examiner felt a headache coming on. He glanced at Bufong and waved his hand. Go and join the group over there. In a while, the 5 of you will be tested together. The examiner will judge whether you are qualified to participate in a magical hand conference or not based on your work. Bufong indifferently nodded his head and walked toward the group of 4 people in the distance. On the spectators' area, the one-eyed old man was leaning against a chair and talking cheerfully with Nangongwan, who was beside him. Although the Nangong family was in a precarious situation, the old man didn't try to befriend Nangongwan. After all, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. No matter how desolate the Nangong family was, he couldn't afford to offend them. Young Miss Nangong, your friend is really interesting. Isn't a chef supposed to stay in the kitchen and cook? Why did he come to participate in a magical hand conference? However, I didn't expect that there would be a chef in our heavenly mist city, the old man said with a smile. Uncle Fu, don't look down on my friend. His culinary skills are something I have never seen before, Nangongwan said. She believed that Bufong's culinary skills would definitely amaze the world. When she tasted his dishes, which were comparable to elixirs, she was shocked for a long time. It was a shock to her mind. The taste was better than elixirs, but the effects weren't any weaker than elixirs. This was simply inconceivable. There weren't many chefs who could reach such a level. It seems like young Miss Nangong is very confident in your friend. Let's wait and see. Uncle Fu didn't believe that a chef could be so amazing. He was a top-notch doctor, but he was crushed by a one-cloud alchemist. How heaven-defying could a chef be? Let's wait and see. The selection is about to begin, Nangong once said calmly. It was a huge arena, and there were many windows on the ceiling above the arena. Light shone down from the ceiling, making the arena extremely bright. The 5 people from Bufong's team stepped onto the arena. There were 5 bronze platforms on the arena, and they were each assigned to take the test. They had to complete the test on those bronze platforms. Bufong touched the crudely made bronze platform. Bufong furrowed his brows when he felt the prickling sensation. The examiner took a few steps forward and stood in the center of the arena. He started explaining the rules of the selection to them. Actually, there weren't any rules. Everyone had to refine a piece of work, and its effects had to be at least at the level of an 8th grade elixir. Only then would they be considered to have passed the selection. This requirement wasn't high. In fact, it could be said that it was quite low. After all, refining an 8th grade elixir wasn't difficult for an alchemist. High-grade alchemists would refine spirit elixirs, and their medicinal effects would be terrifying. Bufong looked at the people around him. They were all calm and unperturbed. It was obvious that they were very confident in their skills. Uncle Fu, who was on the spectator's stand, smiled at Nangongwan and said, "These 4 people are all extraordinary people with special abilities. If young Miss Nangong's friends were to encounter them, it would be difficult for them to stand out." Nangongwan just smiled and didn't say anything. She believed in Onurbu's skills. Bufong could also feel the confidence of these 4 people. It was a kind of affirmation of his strength. Because they were sure of it, they were confident. Okay, let's start the test now. The time limit is 2 hours. Those who exceed the time limit will be eliminated. The examiner wore a solemn expression as he swept his gaze over everyone and announced loudly. As soon as he finished speaking, the people on the arena started to move. This test attracted a lot of people. Just as Uncle Fu said, The four people on the stage were quite famous among the eccentrics. Naturally, their test was also very interesting. Of course, some people also noticed Buffon, who was mixed among the four people. Quite a few people revealed sympathetic gazes. Meeting these four fellows wanted to stand out from the crowd. The difficulty was too great. This kid should be participating in the selection for the first time. He looked unfamiliar, and his luck was also very bad. It was obvious that the crowd didn't have any hope for Buffon. When Buffon took out the black turtle constellation walk and smashed it on the bronze platform, the whole arena became silent. Then, an intense uproar and sneering laughter erupted from the crowd. Was this guy here to make a joke? Taking out a black walk. Was he going to cook? Chapter 485. No one had expected that Buffon would take out a wok. Everyone could clearly see that it was really a wok and not an alchemy furnace used by alchemists to refine elixirs. At first, some people thought that what Buffon took out was an alchemy furnace, but after they saw it clearly, they all burst out laughing. Their laughter was filled with mockery. I thought that an alchemist had appeared. In the end, it turned out to be a wok. Is he using a wok to refine elixirs? Is this kid a doctor? Nonsense. Have you ever seen anyone using a wok to refine elixirs? Even if he is a doctor, he would use a furnace to refine elixirs. Okay? The group of people in the audience started to discuss and argue. The four people in the arena were the ones who were close to Buffon, so they could clearly see that it was really a wok. Not only was there a wok, but there was also a kitchen knife. When Buffon took out the golden dragon bone kitchen knife, the whole area went into an uproar. Oh my God, what was he doing? Was this kid going to cook? A chef also came to participate in the selection. Was he trying to impress the crowd? Everyone was confused. Everyone was puzzled. A kitchen knife and a wok. When these two symbolic tools appeared, no one would believe that Buffon wasn't a chef. Uncle Fu was speechless. He smiled and said, "Young Miss Nangong, this time, we really made a fool of ourselves." However, contrary to his expectations, Nangong Wan's complexion didn't become unsightly. Her red lips curled up slightly, and it seemed as though there was a profound meaning behind it. Uncle Fu looked at Nangong Wan deeply before his gaze continued to fall on the arena. The four people thought that Buffon had come here to make a fool of himself, so they didn't pay much attention to Buffon. True energy revolved around their bodies as they took out bronze furnaces from their spatial spirit tools. Among these four people, 3 of them were doctors, and 1 of them was a poison master. However, regardless of whether they were doctors or poison masters, refining elixirs required medicinal furnaces. A medicinal furnace was naturally inferior to a pill furnace, but compared to a pill furnace, a medicinal furnace was easier to control. Stalk after stalk of spirit herbs were placed on the bronze platform. These spirit herbs exuded a rich medicinal fragrance. Spirit chi also soared into the sky like strands of silk, intertwining with each other, affecting one's state of mind. One of the doctors narrowed his eyes and took a deep breath. He crushed a spirit herb and poured it into the medicine furnace. He lit the fire and started the furnace. The furnace immediately turned scarlet red. After a long time, hot steam rose from the furnace. A red fruit was taken out by a doctor. This doctor's gaze was extremely focused. He suddenly pinched the fruit with both of his hands and twisted it in a strange way. The skin of the fruit was peeled off. This move made many people exclaim in admiration. A doctor's method of handling medicinal ingredients was the key to refining medicine. If the medicinal ingredients were not handled properly, how could one refine a good medicine? A poison master wrapped in a gray robe with a sinister aura was holding a long snake with shining scales in his hand. The long snake flicked its pitch-black tongue, and it was extremely poisonous. The poison master's expression did not change. He pinched his palm and ruthlessly cut a hole in the snake's body. His thumb and index finger dug into the hole and dug out a pitch-black snake gall. He brought the snake gall to his nose and smelled it. The corners of the poison master's mouth curled up. There were fewer poison masters than doctors. This was because becoming a poison master was very risky. After all, They had to deal with poisons. However, they were very clear that it was easier for a real poison master to challenge an alchemist than a doctor. As the saying goes, high risk is accompanied by high reward. Although poison masters were dangerous, it was precisely because of this danger that the medicinal effects of the medicine they refined were even more astonishing. There was once a poison master who managed to squeeze into the top 30 in a magical hand conference. This caused a sensation for a while. One must know that the top 50 seats were reserved for alchemists. It was simply a miracle for someone with special abilities to be able to squeeze into the top 50. The 4 participants displayed their skills one after another. Although it was only a selection, none of them dared to slack off. This was because every time they concocted a pill, they would need to put in a lot of effort. Otherwise, if they made a small mistake, it would mean that they had failed. That price was not something they could afford. All of a sudden, when the 4 contestants were completely focused on refining medicine, a faintly discernible stench suddenly drifted over from afar. A stench? Who failed in refining medicine? Who burned the furnace? This was the first thought that appeared in many people's minds. However, very quickly, their noses twitched. They felt that something was wrong. That stench didn't seem like the smell of a burnt furnace. A doctor couldn't help but turn his head toward the direction where the stench came from. He saw that Bufong had taken out a clay pot and placed it on the bronze platform. The stench was coming from the bronze platform. The dragon bone kitchen knife spun, and it was like a shooting star flashing past. The audience only saw a blur before they saw the ingredients being cut. When the ingredients were poured into the wok and stir-fried, sizzling sounds rang out continuously. Looking at the steam rising from the wok, everyone was dumbfounded. This kid was really cooking on the stage. If he was so awesome, why didn't he ascend to the heavens? A faint fragrance accompanied by a faint stench. This kind of mixed smell made the audience feel a little strange. The 4 contestants on the stage also retracted their gazes. They didn't mind it at all. Although the smell was a little strange, as long as it didn't affect their performance, it would be fine. While they were engrossed in refining the elixir, Bufong began the next step. He walked to the front of the earthen jar on the bronze platform and casually patted it. The lid of the earthen jar was slapped open. Instantly, the originally faint stench became even stronger. It was as if someone had released a stinky fart in front of their noses. What the F***CK? What the hell is this? Why is it so smelly? What is this kid doing? Why is it so smelly? Is that pot filled with sh**T? Cooking? I don't believe him. Where did this clown come from? Is he cooking sh**T? The audience's faces instantly became bitter. They covered their noses with their faces full of shock and anger. They watched as Bufong, who wore an incomparably calm expression, fished out pieces of black objects from the clay jar. The sticky, stinky juice flowed down. In the spectator stand, Fu Ba's face became somewhat dark and blue veins popped out on his forehead. Nangong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She didn't expect that Honorbu would actually bring that dish here. He was trying to stir up trouble. Young Miss Nangong, this isn't right. This kid is a poison master, right? Otherwise, why would he take out such a disgusting thing? Fu Ba's face became somewhat dark. He felt as if he had been made a fool of by Bufong. Chef your head. Sizzle. Bufong flicked the dragon bone kitchen knife, and a piece of pitch-black stinky tofu fell into the wok, splashing the oily juice. The stench rose and became even more intense. In an instant, it covered the entire region. Bang! An explosion resounded. In the distance, a doctor covered his throat and leaned against the bronze platform with tears in his eyes. The medicine stove in front of him exploded, and the medicinal powder scattered all over the ground. It's so stinky that I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. The doctor's anger surged, and he fiercely glared at Bufong. This guy was definitely doing this on purpose. The other 2 doctors didn't look any better. They were covering their noses, and their complexions were dark as if they had been poisoned. Their medicine stoves were shaking unceasingly, and it was obvious that they were on the verge of exploding. Due to the dense stench, they were somewhat unable to control their energy. The only one who wasn't affected was the calm poison master. He looked at Bufong in astonishment, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. "So, you're in the same profession. This is really vicious." The poison master took a deep breath, and the stench entered his nose. It was really stinky. "But I like it," the poison master said with a smile. He threw a pitch-black hairy spider into the medicine stove, and a flame sprang up. The temperature rose abruptly, and a faint pitch-black gas filled the air, along with the stench. Bang! 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 Several explosions resounded, and the medicine stoves of the remaining 2 doctors also exploded, sending medicinal powder flying everywhere. The 3 doctors' complexions were somewhat dark. Since their medicine stoves had exploded, didn't that mean that they wouldn't be able to pass the selection? This was simply too vexing. How could there be such a disgusting person? Buffon's complexion was indifferent. He flipped the stinky tofu in the wok, and the stench also changed. After a long time, he scooped out the deep-fried stinky tofu and placed it in a porcelain bowl. Then, he poured the previously cooked spicy sauce over it. A serving of fragrant spicy stinky tofu was finished. With a sizzle, the 10,000 bestial flames returned to his mouth, and he put away the black turtle constellation wok and the dragon bone kitchen knife. Buffon held the bowl of fragrant, spicy, stinky tofu, and he looked at the examiners, who were covering their noses and gaping in shock. 3 steel-like gazes shot toward Buffon from the side, and it slightly surprised him. When he turned his head to look, he saw the murderous gazes of the 3 doctors. "What's going on?" Buffon was stunned, and he didn't understand what was going on. Chapter 486. What's wrong? You still have the face to say that? When the doctors saw the innocent expression on Buffon's face, they were so angry that they clenched their teeth. They wished they could take off their shoes and throw them at Buffon's face. If it wasn't because of the mess you cooked and the strong stench that affected their thoughts, how could they have accidentally exploded their furnaces? It was all because of this damned fellow. They had thought that this lad was harmless and that he was just here to make some soy sauce. To hell with soy sauce. Who would have thought that this lad was actually so evil? He actually cooked something that smelled like sh*T on the stage in broad daylight. How shameless was he? Buffon was speechless as he looked at the 3 doctors who wanted to bite his flesh. Were they stupid? Ignoring them, Buffon turned his head to look at the examiner and calmly said, "This is my work. I finished it within the allotted 2 hours." At this moment, the examiner came back to his senses. Although he was still shocked, he moved closer to take a look at the dish in Buffon's hands. His appearance was unexpectedly good-looking. Although Buffon's plate presentation technique hadn't received any systematic training, he still had the foundation from his previous life. Thus, the appearance of the dish was quite impressive. At the very least, it was pleasing to the eye. After being an examiner for so many years, this was the first time that he had seen someone cook on the stage. He was somewhat curious. When he took a sniff, the smell of the dish immediately drifted over and entered his nose. His face darkened. "What is this smell?" The examiner almost vomited as he looked at the sweet, spicy, stinky tofu with a frightened expression. "It stinks," Buffon replied expressionlessly. "Are you a poison master?" Poison masters nowadays have learned to keep up with the times. You actually made such a disgusting thing. Are you trying to disgust people? The examiner glared at Buffon. The 3 doctors who weren't far from him also widened their eyes and nodded their heads. "Sir Examiner, you should directly disqualify this fellow from the competition. If he used this kind of disgusting thing in a magical hand conference, it would be a disgrace to our heavenly mist city." The 3 doctors were filled with righteous indignation and unanimously demanded that Buffon be disqualified from the competition. Buffon furrowed his brows and turned his head to look at the 3 doctors. Were these 3 fellows stupid because of the stench? "Don't talk. If you talk again, I'll beat you up," Buffon said calmly. "Yo-ho, this kid actually dared to be so arrogant?" The 3 doctors were enraged. Why would they be afraid of Buffon? Some of them had broken through the supreme being's shackles and became divine physique echelon experts. The other 2 were also at the supremacy stage. Why would they be afraid of a mere supremacy stage kid? Tell me, how do I use this thing? Eat it directly? The examiner stopped the three physicians who were about to make things difficult for him. Instead, his gaze fell on the fragrant, spicy, stinky tofu. Of course we eat it directly, Bufong said. Eating something that smells like sh*t? The examiner swallowed his saliva and glanced at Bufong. He realized that the latter's gaze was very sincere. It was an encouraging look. On the spectator stand, Uncle Fu and Nan Gongwan looked at this scene. It seems like that kid has finished his dish. Let's go down and take a look, Uncle Fu said. After he spoke, he walked down from the spectator stand. He wanted to see how capable this arrogant kid, who dared to enter the magical hand conference as a chef, was. Was that dish really what he was relying on? The examiner was still hesitating. After Nan Gongwan and Uncle Fu walked down, he still didn't choose to eat the fragrant spicy tofu. When he saw Uncle Fu, his eyes lit up. Sir, you've come, the examiner said respectfully. Is this the dish that kid cooked? Uncle Fu squinted his eyes as he looked at the fragrant, spicy, stinky tofu. The two unique scents of fragrant and pungent odor mixed together, giving people an unusual experience. When Uncle Fu saw the dish, his eyes widened. The main reason was that the smell that wafted out of the dish made his hair stand on end. When he was on the spectator stand, the stench he smelled was unbearable. When he smelled it at such a close distance, the stench became even more intense. It was even more stinky than the stench of an ordinary poison master. Chef, this is a chef? Uncle Fu felt as if his worldview had been overturned. That's enough. You don't need to feel embarrassed. I'll taste this dish myself, and I'll test this person. Uncle Fu pursed his lips and said. The examiner felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He placed the plate in Uncle Fu's hand and hid far away, staring at Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu, do you want to taste it? If you don't, then I'll start eating. Nan Gongwan smiled warmly. The stench didn't affect her in the slightest. Compared to the stinky tofu that Owner Bu had cooked in front of the restaurant, this spicy, stinky tofu smelled much better. Uncle Fu was flabbergasted by Nan Gongwan's words. As the princess of the Nan Gong family, she actually wanted to taste such a disgusting thing. Could it be that there was some secret behind it? He used his chopsticks to pick up a piece of stinky tofu. When the chopsticks caught the yellowish, stinky tofu, a rich, oily juice immediately flowed down from the stinky tofu. The stench was disgusting. Uncle Fu felt his stomach churning. He was really putting his life on the line. Uncle Fu closed his eyes and stuffed the stinky tofu into his mouth. He steeled his heart and chewed. A soft and creamy feeling filled his mouth. It felt like smooth milk caressing his skin. The taste was unexpectedly good. Uncle Fu opened his eyes in astonishment and asked in surprise. The surface of the stinky tofu had absorbed a lot of the oily juice. When he bit it, the oily juice flowed out, bringing with it a rich fragrance. If Uncle Fu's first impression was that it was stinky, then he would think that it was tender, and then he would think that it was fragrant. Why did he think that it was fragrant when he ate it? Uncle Fu felt as if his head had been damaged by the stench. However, this feeling came from his taste buds. It was an extremely wonderful feeling. This thing wasn't stinky at all. Uncle Fu's eyes widened, and his face was filled with disbelief. This was the biggest reversal, and Uncle Fu hadn't expected it. He used his chopsticks to pick up another piece of stinky tofu and stuffed it into his mouth. Uncle Fu ate it in a daze. Munch, munch. Uncle Fu ate faster and faster, and his speed became more and more astonishing. The three doctors were dumbfounded. They couldn't understand the emotional expression on Uncle Fu's face. Spicy, refreshing, and fragrant. The fragrant, spicy, stinky tofu caused Uncle Fu's heart to palpitate. The three doctors were dumbfounded. What had happened? Why did Uncle Fu, who had a fiendish look on his face, suddenly become intoxicated? Was that excrement-like thing not bad? It's delicious. It's really delicious. Uncle Fu exclaimed in admiration. Bufong was quite calm. This wasn't beyond his expectations. Moreover, the main point of this dish wasn't its taste, but the spiritual energy and effects contained within it. Sure enough, Uncle Fu's body shook. After eating several pieces of stinky tofu, he felt as if the true energy in his body had started circulating at an extremely fast speed, and the impurities in his body seemed to have been flushed out. Puff! Everyone was dumbfounded by Uncle Fu's farts. Nangong Wan was the first to react. She covered her nose with her sleeves and quickly retreated. Bufong also distanced himself from Uncle Fu without saying anything. The appearance of this stinky fart was because the impurities in Uncle Fu's body had been flushed out. Every time Uncle Fu farted, he felt as if his body had become much lighter. He felt as if he had become much younger. This kind of experience was too refreshing. The effect of this dish was even stronger than the 9th grade elixir, the body-tempering pill. Uncle Fu exclaimed inwardly. That kid wasn't just talking nonsense. The dish he cooked had the same effect as a 9th grade elixir. It was simply inconceivable. He had actually misjudged Bufong. The stench of his stinky fart was even more stinky than the stinky tofu. Bang! An explosion resounded. The poison master on the stage was dumbfounded. His furnace had exploded, and green medicinal powder spread out. That stinky fart was so stinky that it made him, the poison master, lose his mind and cause his furnace to explode. The poison master's heart ached so much that he couldn't breathe. He was on the verge of tears. He was about to finish the dish. He hated it so much that he almost went crazy. Didn't they say that they were birds of a feather? Uncle Fu was a little embarrassed. However, this was uncontrollable. He couldn't stop his smelly fart. After he farted a few times, the effect of the dish weakened. Uncle Fu's mind became much clearer. The effect of this dish had amazed him. Good. I passed. Uncle Fu said, pleasantly surprised. Bufong's culinary skills had actually reached such a level. It was truly inconceivable. The examiner and the 3 doctors were dumbfounded. How could he pass the test like that? It wasn't fair. Bufong didn't care about their protests. Since he had already obtained a spot to participate in the Magical Hand Conference, Bufong naturally wouldn't stay here any longer. He had to go back to his business. He turned around and walked out of the hall. Your Excellency Bufong, you have already obtained a spot to participate in the conference. Don't forget to come to the Heavenly Mist City's Central Plaza to participate in the preliminary round 3 days later. Bufong's figure gradually disappeared into the distance. Uncle Fu, who had just recovered from a shock, quickly shouted at Bufong's back. Uncle Fu was somewhat excited. He suddenly felt that Bufong's appearance might be the hope of this year's Magical Hand Conference. Perhaps this kid could even create a new record. Elder Fu, we can't accept this. That kid's dish disturbed us. Why didn't you disqualify him from the competition? The 3 doctors angrily looked at Uncle Fu and demanded an explanation. They were all people with great potential. They had the chance to enter the top 50. How could they accept being eliminated in the preliminary round? Moreover, the kid who caused them to be eliminated easily obtained a spot to participate in the competition. This was something they couldn't accept. Uncle Fu calmly glanced at the 3 doctors. He licked his lips and didn't say anything. He just passed the last piece of stinky tofu on the porcelain plate to them. You will know after you taste it. The 3 doctors were stunned. They looked at each other in dismay. They looked at the stinky tofu on the porcelain plate and pursed their lips. Chapter 487. Nangong Wan felt that it was a pity that she didn't get to taste the stinky tofu made by Bufong. She had initially rejected the stinky tofu, but after tasting it, she became intoxicated. She was clear about the magical power of this delicacy. It was an extremely mystical dish. After leaving the southern part of the city, the 2 of them sat in the Heavenly Mist City's Spirit Beast carriage and returned to the Cloud Mist restaurant. The outside of the restaurant was still in a mess, and many of the people sent by the Nangong family were busy repairing the place. As such, there were many people coming and going outside the restaurant, and it was quite lively. After Nangong Wan sent Bufong to the restaurant, she sat in the Spirit Beast carriage and went back. Her elixir store was destroyed, and she couldn't let this matter go easily. She had to find a culprit and teach him a lesson. An angry woman was the most terrifying. At this moment, Nangong Wan was somewhat terrifying. However, all of this had nothing to do with Bufong. When Bufong returned to the store, he opened the door for business. Perhaps it was because the elixir store was destroyed, but the number of customers had decreased. However, Bufong was happy to be free. He pulled a chair and curled up at the entrance of the store. The warm sunlight shone down on his body, causing him to feel drowsy. You walked around the store barefooted. She was also somewhat bored. She copied Bufong and pulled a chair to sit at the entrance. However, after sitting for a while, she couldn't stand the sunlight and ran away. She sat cross-legged beside Lord Go and blanked out expressionlessly. In the Nangong family's courtyard, Nangong Wuk's face was gloomy as he clasped his hands behind his back. Did you find anything? Who was the culprit behind last night's incident? Nangong Wuk asked in a dignified voice. Family head, I found out that it should be someone from the Zhang family. Last night, the Zhang family's commander, Zhang He, went missing and hasn't returned yet. The Zhang family is furious, but they didn't say anything. There is something fishy about this, an elder said with a frown. Nangong Wuk paced a few steps and nodded. He squinted his eyes and said, something is indeed wrong. According to the Zhang family's nature, the disappearance of a commander should have caused a search in the whole city. But now, there is no movement at all. Unless they have a guilty conscience, they don't dare to search for him. But Zhang He's disappearance. Why did he disappear? Could it be that Zhang He is dead? The elder was puzzled. Nangong Wuk's heart thumped. He suddenly recalled that the store was still in good condition. It was highly possible that Zhang He had been killed by the people in the store. After all, if Zhang He wanted to destroy the store like he destroyed the elixir store, he would definitely anger the powerhouse in the store. Who in the store could kill Zhang He without making a sound? Who else could it be other than that terrifying woman? As he thought of this, Nangong Wuk couldn't help but shiver. Prepare a spirit beast carriage for me. I'm going to make a trip to the Zhang clan. We can't let this slide for nothing. We have to get back at them. The elder was startled and looked at Nangong Wuk in a daze. All right, Nangong Wuk had become much more reliable. The Heavenly Mist City's teleportation array was bustling once again. Many experts were teleported over. Every time they teleported, there would be many people. It wasn't just the teleportation array. Outside the city, there was a continuous stream of huge battleships. On those battleships were experts from various factions. The alchemists from the Heavenly Pill City and Heavenly Shine City, the two big cities of the Pill Palace, all came in groups. After all, the Magical Hand Conference was being held in the Heavenly Mist City. Heavenly Pill City, Mysterious Capital House. There was a battleship with the words Mysterious Capital House painted on it. The Mysterious Capital House was the best elixir store in the Heavenly Pill City, just like the Flowing Cloud House in the Heavenly Mist City. Actually, every top elixir store had a top alchemist overseeing it. This time, there was a Four Clouds alchemist on Mysterious Capital House's battleship. He was one of the judges for the Magical Hand Conference. The Brilliant Sun House of Heavenly Shine City also had a battleship. With the addition of the alchemists from the Pill Towers of the Heavenly Pill City and Heavenly Shine City, the lineup this time could be said to be extravagant. The Heavenly Mist City was the weakest among the three pill cities. The main reason for this was that there was only one Four Clouds alchemist overseeing the entire Heavenly Mist City. There were 5 Four Clouds alchemist judges, and 4 of them were experts from the Heavenly Pill City and Heavenly Shine City. The Heavenly Mist City's city lord personally came out to welcome them. He brought all the great alchemists to the city lord's mansion for a gathering. The Heavenly Mist City immediately became lively. Light flickered within the array. An expert wrapped in a black robe appeared. He carried a bronze coffin on his back, and he emitted a sinister aura. Did my 2 junior brothers die in the Heavenly Mist City's secret realm? I heard that many of them survived. My puppet sex people died. How did they survive? He raised his head, and his eyes, which were hidden under the black robe, were extremely cold. The Wind and Thunder Pavilion's experts also walked out of the teleportation array. Xiao Changyun's death was a huge blow to the Wind and Thunder Pavilion. After all, Xiao Changyun's identity wasn't ordinary. Naturally, someone had to come and investigate. Xiao Chanyan wasn't the only one. Many of the factions that lost their disciples in the secret realm made a comeback, and they sent even more powerful disciples. A man with a giant sword on his back stepped out of the Grand Baron Sect's array. He was the overlord demon sword venerable, Shimin Xian, who was ranked third among the Grand Baron Sect's 10 great geniuses. He was a swordsman who had comprehended sword intent with a heavy sword. He was one of the 3 most outstanding people among the Grand Baron Sect's younger generation. His cultivation was extremely powerful, and he had broken through 3 supreme being shackles. The ancient Shura city's experts also returned. Misha respectfully stood beside a young man. This young man had a noble status, and he was a direct descendant of the ancient Shura city's Shura imperial family. Lord Tong He. The Shura Tower is in heavenly mist city. I saw it with my own eyes, Misha respectfully said. Tong He, who had blood-red hair and an incomparably handsome face, took a deep breath and said, I sensed an extremely strong aura from the Shura Tower. The Shura Tower is our ancient Shura city's sacred object, and we can't lose it outside. Numerous experts appeared one after another, and the heavenly mist city was in a state of turmoil. However, no matter how turbulent the heavenly mist city was, Bu Fong was still leisurely lying on his chair, basking in the sun. He was always so lazy, squinting his eyes as he quietly watched the clouds roll by. When a customer came over, he would enter the kitchen to cook, and after he finished cooking, he would continue lying in front of the door. His laziness caused many of the customers to not know whether to laugh or cry. The flat ground outside the restaurant had been cleaned up, and only debris was left on the ground. The collapsed walls were all taken away, and the area suddenly became much more spacious. Only a single restaurant stood there, and it was extremely dazzling. The number of customers gradually decreased, and the Nangon family's members also returned home. Bu Fong curled up on his chair, and he looked at the afterglow of the setting sun, which elongated the restaurant's shadow. In the distance, 2 figures slowly approached. They were 2 figures wrapped in blood-red robes, and their blood-red hair was illuminated by the setting sun, which made them seem even more resplendent. Bu Fong calmly looked at the 2 people walking toward the restaurant. Misha looked at Bu Fong, who was sitting in front of the restaurant, and he sucked in a breath of cold air. He didn't dare to be the slightest bit careless. After all, Bu Fong was someone who survived the terrifying Blood-Red Man, and he definitely had some powerful methods up his sleeves. Misha knew how terrifying the Blood-Red Man was, and that was why he respected Bu Fong even more, regardless of how weak Bu Fong's cultivation was. Tong He, who was beside him, curled up his lips, and his handsome face was like an exquisite work of art. The Shura Tower's aura is emitted from that person's body. It seems like the person who obtained the Shura Tower in the end is that ant, who hasn't even broken through the Supreme Being's shackles. Chapter 488. Under the afterglow of the setting sun, the 2 figures were elongated. Bu Fong stood up and stretched his body. He was about to close the bronze gate, and, in the day's business, 2 figures slowly approached from afar. As they stepped on the crushed stones on the ground, a creaking sound could be heard as they walked toward the store. Tong He's gaze was calm, and his blood-red hair fluttered in the wind. His gaze landed on Bu Fong's body, or rather, the small tower on Bu Fong's neck. That was the Shura Tower. Tong He didn't know why, but he suddenly became excited. After searching for so long, he finally saw the Shura Tower with his own eyes. Sir, endure it. This kid is not simple. Misha looked at the excited Tong He, and his heart trembled. He hurriedly pulled his arm and shouted at him. Tong He calmed down after hearing Misha's words. If what Misha said was true, then the kid in front of him was definitely very capable, since he was able to snatch the Shura Tower from the hands of that terrifying existence. He really needed to be more careful. Tong He tidied up his clothes and walked toward the store with a solemn expression on his face. Bu Fong looked at the 2 people walking toward the store with a puzzled expression on his face. Although they looked familiar, he couldn't remember where he had seen them before. However, Since he couldn't remember, he was too lazy to think about it. Tong He first sized up the store before looking at Bu Fong with a gentle gaze. Are you the owner of this restaurant? Bu Fong was startled. Yes. Tong He's gaze landed on the small tower on Bu Fong's neck. A trace of desire and greed appeared in his eyes. It was the Shura Tower, the sacred artifact of the ancient Shura city. How could such an item be allowed to wander around outside? Tong He's gaze caused Bu Fong to furrow his brows. Misha's expression changed, and he hurriedly pulled Tong He's arm to remind him. Tong He came back to his senses and took a deep breath. He smiled apologetically at Bu Fong. This is the first time I've seen a restaurant in heavenly Mist City. Can I have a taste of your culinary skills? Since he couldn't snatch it by force, then he might as well take a roundabout route and try to get close to him first. Tong He thought to himself, I'll investigate this guy's strength first before making a decision. Oh, so you're here for a meal. Today's business is over. Come back tomorrow. Bu Fong came to a realization, but after a moment of realization, he calmly said. He took a step back and was about to close the bronze door. Tong He was dumbfounded. Why did the store close? They had already seen the Shura Tower. If they were to leave, just like that, Tong He naturally felt somewhat unwilling. He raised his palm and pressed it against the bronze door. Wait, I can pay. I can pay many times the price, Tong He shouted. Did Bu Fong look like the kind of person who would waver over the store's principles for money? Of course, if the system's rules were changed, Bu Fong might really consider it. However, with the system's rules, Bu Fong was too lazy to argue with Tong He. He calmly glanced at Tong He's hand that was pressed against the door. Tong He felt somewhat sullen in his heart. He clenched his teeth and unwillingly released his hand. He was an existence that had broken through 3 of the Supreme Being's shackles, yet he was being treated like this by an ant. He was simply infuriated. Sir, calm down, Misha hurriedly said. Bang! With a loud sound, Bu Fong closed the bronze door. Tong He was closer to the door, so he was slammed in the face. The cold wind blew against his hair, causing his entire body to tremble. No one had ever dared to treat him like this. In the ancient Shura city, everyone was respectful when they saw him. He didn't expect that an ant-like brat would dare to ignore him and even slam the door in his face. I can't take it anymore. Today, even if I have to rob someone, I will take back the Shura Tower. Tong He took a deep breath and coldly said. As soon as he finished speaking, a majestic wave of true energy surged from his body. His hair fluttered in the wind, and his eyes lit up. Tong He raised his palm, and a vortex of true energy revolved in his palm. Just as he was about to break through the door, a voice suddenly rang out. With a creak, the bronze door suddenly opened. Tong He and Misha were dumbfounded. When the bronze door opened, the person who appeared wasn't Bu Fong. Tong He's pupils shrank, and when he saw the beautiful woman with long black hair, his true energy trembled. Why did a woman appear here? Moreover, it was such a beautiful woman. Yu's ice-cold gaze landed on Tong He. Her indifferent gaze caused goosebumps to rise all over Tong He's body. Did you change your mind? Are you going to let us in? Tong He retracted the true energy on his body and smiled gently. He mustn't lose his poise in front of a beautiful woman. However, he didn't notice that Misha, who was beside him, had an expression as though he had seen a ghost. Misha's complexion was deathly pale, and his lips trembled. The moment he saw you, he felt as though he was struck by lightning. Tong He didn't know who you was, but how could he, who had stayed in the secret realm, not know her? The Netherworld ship's Netherworld woman. The cursed Netherworld woman. How could this woman appear here? Wasn't the Netherworld woman supposed to stay in the secret realm? How powerful was the Netherworld woman? It was absolutely unimaginable. Encountering the Netherworld woman in the secret realm was equivalent to death. This was enough to show how terrifying the Netherworld woman was. Lord, Lord, let's leave first. Misha's heart trembled as he looked at you in fright. He pulled Tong He's arm. Scram. You calmly looked at the two of them and opened her red lips. An ice-cold word came out of her mouth. She could feel the malice coming from Tong He's body. If they were in the secret realm, she would have already attacked him. After all, a person like him wouldn't be able to survive for more than 3 seconds in front of her. Scram? Tong he was taken aback, and his face became gloomy. She asked him to scram? This woman actually didn't want to give him face. He wasn't able to see through Yu's strength, but he wasn't afraid of her. That was because you didn't look old, unlike those old monsters. Tong he, wasn't afraid of anyone in the same generation as him. We'll scram right now. We'll scram right now. Misha was so scared that his guts almost jumped out of his throat. Tong he sneered and raised his palm. He wanted to force his way out. He was determined to retrieve the Shura Tower today. All of a sudden, he felt as though time had stopped. A fair and slender finger slowly rose up before his eyes. Then, the finger touched the space between his eyebrows. Buzz, Tong he felt as though his head was about to explode, and an intense pain instantly spread throughout his body. A terrifying force erupted from his body, and he was sent flying several miles away like a cannonball. Misha's mind trembled, and he frantically ran away under Yu's gaze. The Netherworld woman was actually guarding this restaurant. Just what kind of background did this restaurant have? Misha's mind trembled. Tong he crawled up from the ground. He was stupefied, and fear lingered in his heart. His forehead swelled up, and it turned purple. He felt as though his head was about to explode. A single finger. It was just a single finger, and he was sent flying before he could even see how that woman attacked. It was simply terrifying. Just who was that woman? There wasn't anyone in the same generation that could suppress him like that. Unless that woman was from the Hidden Dragon Royal Court. Could it be that the Hidden Dragon Royal Court was behind this restaurant? Sir, are you all right? When Misha saw that Tong he wasn't dead, he felt as though a huge rock had been lifted from his heart. There's something strange about this restaurant. From today onwards, you better keep an eye on this place. We will definitely find an opportunity to take back the Shura Tower. Tong he's heart was filled with anger, and he coldly stood up. After saying those words to Misha, he turned around and left. Misha heaved a sigh of relief. Sir Tong he was still a rational person, and he didn't rashly attack. Otherwise, he couldn't imagine how the two of them would die. After all, that woman was the Netherworld woman. It was no wonder that kid was able to deal with the man covered in blood. It turned out that he had the Netherworld woman's help. It seemed as though he had to consider this matter at length. Misha followed behind Tong he, and his mind was filled with countless thoughts. All of a sudden, he squinted his eyes, and a glint flashed through them. If the people from the Hidden Dragon Royal Court find out that they're the Netherworld woman in this store, I wonder what will happen. The Hidden Dragon Royal Court was a top-notch holy land in the Hidden Dragon continent, and it was more powerful than all the first-rate powers. Even though the ancient Shura city was powerful, it still paled in comparison to the Hidden Dragon Royal Court. However, after thinking about it for a moment, Misha shook his head. The Netherworld woman wasn't someone to be trifled with, and the people from the Hidden Dragon Royal Court weren't people to be trifled with either. 3 days quickly passed by. Early in the morning, the sunlight shone down on Bu Fong's body. When he opened his eyes, Bu Fong crawled out of his bed. After washing up, he went to the kitchen and practiced his knife techniques. After he finished cooking the Lord Go and used breakfast, he walked out of the store. He remembered the last words that Fu Bo shouted at him. Today, the preliminary round of the Magical Hand Conference would be held in the Heavenly Mist City's Central Plaza, and he naturally wouldn't miss it. Bu Fong wore a long robe, and after he walked out of the store, he jumped up and took down the Cloud Mist Restaurant signboard. When he saw the 4 words on the signboard, the corners of Bu Fong's mouth curled up. He carried the signboard and rushed toward the Heavenly Mist City's Central Plaza. He wanted to participate in the competition, and he wanted to let everyone know that he was representing the Cloud Mist Restaurant. The rise of the Cloud Mist Restaurant would begin today. Chapter 489. The Heavenly Mist City's Central Plaza was located in the center of the city, and it was surrounded by rows upon rows of tall bronze buildings. The surrounding buildings belonged to many big families. Among them, the Lin, Zhang, and Nangong families all had their own tall buildings. Other than these 3 big families, The flowing cloud house was also located in one of these tall buildings. Compared to the three big families, the flowing cloud house's buildings were even taller, and the decorations inside were even more dazzling. The Pill Tower was quite far away from the central plaza. After all, the Pill Tower was constantly emitting pill energy, and if it was built in the center of the city, it would affect the city. Thus, regardless of whether it was Heavenly Pill City, Heavenly Shine City, or Heavenly Mist City, their pill towers were all built in remote places. When Bufong walked along a small path toward the depths of the tall buildings that were like a forest of steel, the number of people around him gradually increased. All sorts of spirit beast carriages sped along, bringing with them a strong gust of wind and clamor. Many people saw Bufong. After all, Bufong's current appearance was too eye-catching, as he was carrying a huge signboard. The words Cloud Mist Restaurant were written on the signboard. What was he doing? Many people sneered when they saw Bufong's appearance, and they were speechless. Some of them also saw the words on the signboard. Cloud Mist Restaurant? A restaurant? There was a restaurant in Heavenly Mist City? Although the Cloud Mist Restaurant was very popular, it was still unknown in the entire Heavenly Mist City. Most people were still taking fasting pills. They didn't even know that there was a restaurant in Heavenly Mist City. Of course, there were also some familiar people who saw Owner Boo, and they were startled. Owner Boo, what are you going to do with the signboard? I'm going to participate in the Magical Hand Conference, Bufong said calmly as he hurried along. A chef like you is going to participate in the Magical Hand Conference? Owner Boo, don't make a fuss. Those familiar with Bufong were speechless. The Magical Hand Conference was a competition for alchemists. What was a chef doing there? Everyone thought that Bufong was joking. However, Bufong was not joking. Along the way, Bufong met quite a few familiar faces. These people were all there to watch the ceremony. After all, the Magical Hand Conference was a large-scale competition in the Pill Palace, and it was very attractive. He would be able to meet many famous alchemists, and he might even be able to meet the top executives of the Pill Palace. The top executives of the Pill Palace were all incomparably powerful alchemists. He was an idol in the hearts of the people in the Pill Palace. Compared to the doubts of those familiar with him, those who didn't know Bufong sneered when they heard Bufong say that he, a chef, was going to participate in the ceremony. After passing through the steel forest of buildings, Bufong's eyes lit up as if there was an incandescent light flickering in front of him. All of a sudden, it became spacious. A huge square lay between these buildings, filled with a magnificent aura. Old Boo, we're here. Look over here. From afar, Bufong seemed to have heard someone shouting. Bufong subconsciously turned his head toward the source of the shout and saw Nangong Wuk and Nangong Wan waving at him from afar. Bufong was taken aback for a moment, but he still walked over. When Nangong Wuk saw that Bufong was carrying his restaurant signboard, his expression became strange. Old Boo, why are you carrying a signboard? Aren't you here to participate in the competition? I want to spread the fame of my restaurant. If I don't take out my signboard, how will people know that I'm representing the Cloud Mist Restaurant? Bufong said as if it was a matter of course. All right, what you said makes sense. I'm actually speechless. Nangong Wuk remembered that the main reason Bufong participated in the Magical Hand Conference was to spread the fame of his restaurant. But isn't this a little too exaggerated? Nangong Wan squinted her eyes. She suddenly looked forward to the scene of Owner Boo winning the competition and walking down the stage with his head held high and chest puffed out. At that time, many people's eyeballs would pop out from their sockets. Just as the three of them were talking, more and more people gathered in the square. In the sky, a huge metal warship descended, stirring up a strong wind. Experts wearing white alchemy robes walked out of the warship. Duan Yun's gray hair fluttered in the wind. The moment he walked out of the Heavenly Pill City's warship, he couldn't help but take a deep breath. In a Magical Hand Conference, he had to get into the top 50. Ever since he returned from the southern region, Duan Yun had been in seclusion. He constantly tempered his alchemy skills. The trip to the southern region had given him a huge shock. The dishes cooked by a restaurant were actually more powerful than his elixirs. This was something that made an alchemist feel despair. If an alchemist was defeated by a chef, how could he still have the face to call himself the noblest profession in the Hidden Dragon continent? Duan Yin, perform well. With your current strength, it won't be a problem for you to get into the top 50. An old man walked out of the warship behind Duan Yin. He patted Duan Yin's shoulder and said with a smile. Duan Yin turned his head and looked at the old man. His eyes were filled with respect. This old man was his teacher, the Heavenly Pill City's esteemed great alchemist, Four-Cloud Alchemist Gu He. Great Master Gu, he was also one of the judges of the Magical Hand Conference. Duan Yin nodded his head excitedly, and a trace of determination appeared in his eyes. All right, go and prepare yourself. Follow your senior brothers and sisters. I hope that you won't disappoint me. This time, we're participating in an away game. Don't embarrass the Heavenly Pill City. Great Master Gu He smiled and stroked his long beard. Then, he walked away with the demeanor of an immortal. Duan Yin followed behind his senior brothers and sisters as they walked toward the square. The Heavenly Mist City's alchemy level is much lower than our Heavenly Pill Cities. This time, we must let the people of the Heavenly Mist City experience the strength of our Heavenly Pill City. In the Pill Palace, our Heavenly Pill City is the strongest. Look, there is actually someone who brought a signboard to participate in the competition. Duan Yin's senior brothers and sisters looked around in surprise. All of them had their own pride. Suddenly, Duan Yin heard a senior sister cry out in alarm. He subconsciously looked in the direction the senior sister was pointing and saw a slender figure carrying a huge signboard toward the registration area. That figure seemed somewhat familiar. Duan Yin's pupils constricted, and he felt somewhat puzzled. He felt as though he had seen that figure somewhere before. However, after thinking for a long time, he couldn't recall where he had seen it before. Duan Yin was dragged by his senior brothers and sisters to register. 8 arenas were set up on the spacious ground of the central square. Since there were too many participants, the competition would take place in all 8 arenas at the same time. When Bu Fong appeared at the registration area with his signboard, the alchemist in charge of registration looked at Bu Fong as though he was looking at an idiot. This was the first time he saw a chef registering for the competition. It was also the first time he saw someone registering for the competition while carrying a signboard. Who invited this clown? Was he trying to increase the effect of the program? Old Bu, although you registered for the special category, the rules of the preliminary round are different. Your opponent might be a poison master, a doctor, or an alchemist. You must do your best and don't get eliminated too quickly, Nangong Wuk said as he prepared to leave. After Nangong Wuk took his number plate, he prepared to leave. Before he left, he gave Bu Fong a few words of warning. Bu Fong nodded. The number on Bu Fong's signboard was the 8th arena, which was in the corner of the square. It was in a remote area, but Bu Fong didn't pay much attention to it. Nangong Wuk was assigned to the 3rd arena, which was in the middle. Nangong Wuk was assigned to the 6th arena. The 3 of them were assigned to different positions, so they went their separate ways. Nangong Wuk, that idiot carrying the signboard is your friend, right? That kind of trash actually has the guts to participate in the competition. When Nangong Wuk arrived in front of the 3rd arena, he suddenly heard someone ridiculing him. He was slightly startled and turned his head to look. The person who ridiculed him was a fair-skinned man wearing an alchemist robe and emitting a powerful aura. At this moment, this man was sneering. Lin Sanpao, you don't know anything about my brother-in-law's level. Don't talk nonsense here, Nangong Wuk said calmly. Lin Sanpao, the genius alchemist of the Lin family, shook his head. Nangong Wuk was a weirdo, so his friend was also a weirdo. Your brother-in-law's level? A chef? Nangong Wuk, don't think that I'm as stupid as you. A chef definitely won't be able to pass the preliminary round. I have never heard of a chef participating in the competition, Lin Sanpao said with a mocking smile. Nangong Wuk glanced at him and waved his hand. He said in disgust, my brother-in-law is someone who wants to create miracles. What do you know? You just need to keep your eyes open and watch. After he finished speaking, Nangong Wuk ignored Lin Sanpao and stepped onto the arena, preparing to start the preliminary round. A chef who wants to create miracles? Lin Sampow rolled his eyes and stepped onto the arena. He thought that Nangong Wuk was joking. On the other side, in the 8th arena, Bufong also carried the signboard and stepped onto the arena in front of the dumbfounded judges. He walked toward the bronze arena that belonged to him. The dozens of contestants on the arena looked at Bufong as if they were looking at an idiot. Who the hell came to participate in the competition with a signboard? What was written on that signboard? Cloud Mist Restaurant? Was he here to participate in the competition or to open a restaurant? Wasn't his grandstanding a little too much? What happened next stunned the judges even more. Bang! Bufong smashed the heavy black turtle constellation walk on the bronze arena, causing it to be slightly flattened. He swung the dragon bone kitchen knife and placed it on the bronze arena. He then took out a chopping board and a porcelain plate. When this set of equipment appeared, everyone was dumbfounded. A kitchen knife, a black wok, a chopping board, a porcelain plate, and a signboard. Are you really planning to open a restaurant in the arena? Suke thought. Where did this clown come from? After he finished everything, Bufong raised his head and used a velvet rope to tie up his hair. He looked at the judges with a sincere expression on his face. I'm ready. Bufong exhaled. Chapter 490. Are you ready? You're going to cook, aren't you? When the surrounding people heard Bufong's words, they were speechless. With this set of equipment, it didn't look like he was going to participate in a magical hand conference. Wasn't he going to participate in a cooking competition? Perhaps it was because it was the preliminary round, but there were very few people around the arena. After all, it was only the preliminary round, so there weren't many people watching. Most people were looking forward to the semifinals and the finals. At that time, only the truly talented alchemists would remain on the arena. That kind of battle was truly exciting and thrilling. The judges in charge of the Magical Hand Conference were all members of the Pill Tower, and every one of them was a high-level alchemist. The judge couldn't bear to watch Bufong's behavior. He walked in front of Bufong and looked at the bronze platform with a pout. He was speechless as he said, "Contestant, are you here to make a joke? The Magical Hand Conference is a very serious competition of the Pill Palace. If you're here to make a joke, please leave." Bufong furrowed his brows and looked at the judge. Why do you think that I'm here to make a joke? The surrounding people looked at Bufong with ridicule. He had even taken out a kitchen knife and a black wok. How could he say that he wasn't here to make a joke? Didn't you say that all people with special abilities can participate? As long as their dishes meet your requirements, it's fine. Doctors, poison masters, and alchemists can all participate. Why can't chefs participate? Bufong asked seriously. The judge's face darkened. He took a deep breath and was at a loss for words. He really couldn't answer Bufong's question. There was no rule that said chefs couldn't participate in the conference, but it was a convention. Everyone knew that it was meaningless for chefs to participate in the conference. Could it be that the dishes made by chefs could achieve the effects of medicinal powder? Even if they were effective, could they be better than spirit elixirs? Fine. Then you can continue to stay here. I want to see what you can come up with. If you're here to make a joke, I will personally throw you off the stage. The referee was a little angry and said coldly. Bufong rolled his eyes, too lazy to bother with this guy. Bufong took down the plaque on the bronze platform and placed it in front of the bronze platform. Then, he calmly prepared to start the match. The surrounding people also retracted their gazes. There were 50 contestants on the 8th ring, and about 1/3 of them were alchemists, while the rest were people with special abilities. The requirements for the preliminary round are actually very simple. Within the time limit of 2 hours, the alchemists need to concoct a 9th-grade pill, while the poison masters and doctors need to concoct a medicinal powder or medicinal liquid equivalent to a 9th-grade pill. The referee stood in the middle of the arena and announced loudly. After he finished speaking, his gaze landed on Bufong. He furrowed his brows and continued. I hope that everyone can treat this ceremony seriously. This is a test of your abilities over the years. It's a chance for you to stand out. Don't be like a certain someone, trying to please the crowd. Everyone knew who the referee was talking about, and they all sneered. Even a chef came to participate in a magical hand conference. It was quite funny. The alchemy trend in Heavenly Pill City and Heavenly Shine City was even more popular, and a fasting pill was developed in many different forms. In those two cities, restaurants were basically extinct, unlike Heavenly Mist City, where the cloud mist restaurant still existed. Thus, they naturally looked down on chefs. Bufong was very calm. He was very confident in his own abilities, so he remained indifferent. The sneers from a crowd didn't affect him at all. The referee said a lot, and in the end, he gave the order, and the entire plaza began to compete. In an instant, the atmosphere in the plaza changed. Bang! Waves of heat surged, and in the center of Heavenly Mist City, flames of various colors soared into the sky. These were the alchemy flames of alchemists, and their temperature was extremely high. Playing with fire was actually a skill that every alchemist had. Some alchemists practiced this skill, so it was very cool. On Bufong's stage, many alchemists possessed alchemy flames. Flames of various colors floated above their palms, and as the flames burned fiercely, the air around them emitted crackling sounds. Some of the alchemists flicked their fingers, and flames that resembled fairies danced on their fingers. It was extremely cool. Doctors and poison masters naturally didn't have the ability to control fire, and they all looked at the alchemists with envy. Their pill furnaces relied on ordinary flames, so they could only use their hands to ignite the flames. This made their pill furnaces quite inferior. In fact, flames were also the main reason why there was a gap between alchemists and doctors. The alchemists who were playing with fire felt extremely proud when they felt the envy of the doctors. They waved their hands, and their alchemy flames surged into their pill furnaces, causing the temperature of the stage to rise. These alchemists sneered at the doctors and poison masters. They had a natural sense of superiority when facing these people. The doctors and poison masters felt extremely sullen, and they turned their heads away in resentment. All of a sudden, they remembered that there was still someone at the bottom of the list. It was the kid who came to participate in the conference with a signboard. Their flames couldn't defeat the alchemists, but they couldn't defeat a chef who came to make fun of them. They turned their heads to look at Bufong's position. Boom! A ball of golden flames almost blinded their eyes. Bufong opened his mouth, and a ball of golden flames shot out. Once this ball of flames appeared, it was as resplendent as the sun, and the light it emitted was extremely dazzling. There seemed to be invisible beast roars echoing within the flames. Spirit beasts galloped, ferocious beasts roared, and sea beasts roared. All sorts of sounds bloomed within the flames. Buzz, the hearts of all the people on the 8th stage trembled. The expressions of the alchemists changed drastically. This kind of flame fluctuation. Everyone turned their heads to look, and they all saw the golden flames that Bufong had spat out. That flame was like the king of flames, and it caused the alchemy flames in their dantian to become restless. It was a kind of restlessness that wanted to worship it. Heaven and earth obsidian flame. All the alchemists sucked in a breath of cold air. That funny kid actually spat out a heaven and earth obsidian flame. The doctors and poison masters were a loss. Their flames were ordinary flames, and they didn't have any spirituality. Therefore, they couldn't sense the evil intentions of the 10,000 bestial flame. They only felt that the flame was extremely powerful, but they didn't know how powerful it was. The judge's mouth was slightly agape, a heaven and earth obsidian flame. This kid actually had a heaven and earth obsidian flame? It shouldn't be. Aren't only alchemists able to subdue a heaven and earth obsidian flame? Could it be that this kid? The judge narrowed his eyes. Could it be that Bufong was lying to him? This kid was actually a talented alchemist? That's right. That must be it. However, Bufong's next action tore the conjecture in his heart into pieces. Bufong took out a clay pot from the system dimensional bag, and he placed it on the bronze platform. Aside from the clay pot, he also took out many dishes. These were really dishes. They weren't famous spirit herbs. The judge stood in front of Bufong's bronze platform, and a trace of pity appeared on his face. What Bufong did next made him feel even more bitter. Not only him, but every alchemist in the arena also felt bitter. That was because Bu Fong actually guided the heaven and earth obsidian flame onto the black wok, and he used it to cook it. This kid actually used a heaven and earth obsidian flame to cook. He's wasting the heaven and earth obsidian flame like this. Why didn't he get killed by the lightning? The judge roared in his heart. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Bu Fong poured some oil into the wok, and the dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand. He spun the knife and cut the ingredients. The ingredients that were cut fell into the wok, and Bu Fong stir-fried them, emitting a fragrant aroma. Everyone in the arena was speechless. Even the spectators below the arena didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was really cooking. There was actually someone cooking in the arena of the Magical Hand Conference. There were really all kinds of weirdos in a big forest. The judge stood in front of Bu Fong, and he stared at Bu Fong, cooking with a heaven and earth obsidian flame. He wanted to see what this prodigal kid could cook up. Aren't you going to step back a little? Bu Fong grabbed the clay pot, and when he was about to open the lid, he suddenly felt the judge's fierce gaze, and he asked curiously, what did he mean? Why should I step back a little? Don't even think about playing any tricks. I will keep my eyes on you. The judge sneered. Keep your eyes on me. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. Fine, as long as you're happy. I just hope that you won't cry later. Bu Fong looked at the judge as if he was looking at an idiot. True energy gushed out from his hand, and he raised his palm, patting the clay pot. But there was a buzzing sound, and the judge's eyes lit up. He clasped his hands behind his back, and he stood in front of Bu Fong's bronze platform. He stared at the clay pot in Bu Fong's hand. Could it be that the thing inside the clay pot was this guy's trump card? The judge's neck stretched out, and he suddenly became curious. There was a loud bang. The lid soared into the sky. The judge's neck stiffened, and the curiosity on his face disappeared like water. An odor wafted out of the clay pot, and it instantly drilled into his nose. Chapter 491. When the smell from the clay jar drifted in front of the magistrate, the stench seemed to erupt in an instant, drilling into the magistrate's nostrils. The stench that was brewing in that instant caused the magistrate's curious expression to freeze in an instant. His face changed color at a speed visible to the naked eye. First, it turned yellow, then purple, then black. It was so dark that he almost vomited. What kind of smell was that? The judge's mouth bulged, and his eyes widened. He retreated several steps and sat on the ground. His face was filled with despair. Bu Fong glanced at the judge, and the corners of his mouth rose. He leisurely took out several pieces of stinky tofu from the clay jar. Swish! The pitch-black gravy spilled out, emitting a thick stench. The stench drifted out, drifting further and further away. The judge finally understood why Bu Fong had asked that question. Why didn't he retreat? How would he know that the clay jar contained such a damn thing? What the hell was that thing? Feces? Below the stage, several figures widened their eyes as they watched. When they saw Bu Fong take out that clay jar, their eyes widened. It was because of that stinky jar that they couldn't pass the selection. This guy was the culprit. They didn't expect that Bu Fong would dare to take out such a stinky thing in the arena. Wasn't he afraid of causing public outrage? He casually waved his hand, and true energy covered the stinky tofu. He started to process it. Since Bu Fong wanted to attract people's attention, he naturally had to use the stinky tofu. The stinky tofu's stench was stinky enough to attract people's attention. Everyone was curious, and when they smelled the stench, they would want to know where it came from. If he could attract people's attention, wouldn't it be a good time to promote his Cloud Mist restaurant? That was why Bu Fong still decided to use the stinky tofu. He believed in his own skill. He wanted to use the stinky tofu to make a name for himself. The stinky tofu was enough to let him advance, and it could also increase people's curiosity about him. It would help promote his Cloud Mist restaurant, so why not? The smell of the stinky tofu gradually spread in the arena. Soon, the contestants in the arena smelled an odor that made their hair stand on end. What's that smell? Why is it so smelly? On the stage, everyone's expression changed. The alchemists' faces were filled with fear. In order to refine pills, they needed to use their mental energy to communicate with the alchemic fire. They did not dare to slack off in the slightest. The appearance of this smell completely affected their thoughts, causing their mental energy to become somewhat unstable. However, they were alchemists after all. They were much stronger than the doctors in the selections. Although it was affected, there was no sign of the furnace exploding. However, they were still furious. When they were concentrating on refining the pills, the stench wafted over. The feeling simply made it hard for them to breathe. Everyone angrily turned their heads to look at the source of the stench. There, Bufong was leisurely cooking stinky tofu. This time, Bufong still planned to order a spicy, stinky tofu. This lunatic, he's actually cooking shit in the arena. Everyone's eyes widened, and their faces were filled with anger. What made them even angrier was that Bufong used the heaven and earth obsidian flame to cook feces. How could there be such a wasteful person in this world? Giving the heaven and earth obsidian flame to such a person was really a waste. They were so angry that their faces were almost distorted. Boom, boom. The sounds of medicine furnaces exploding rang out. As expected, the doctors could not endure it. Their hands trembled, and their mental energy fluctuated, causing the medicine furnaces to explode. The medicinal powder scattered in the air. The alchemists, on the other hand, were much better. Although the alchemic fire in their furnaces was constantly flickering, at least they were able to stabilize it. The judge crawled up from the ground, his face black. Previously, he was the closest, so he smelled it the most clearly. That sour and refreshing smell was simply, "What the hell are you doing?" The judge was so angry that his lips were trembling. He felt that Bufong was definitely here to cause trouble. Could such a stinky thing have the same effect as an elixir? Bufong glanced at the judge, but he did not answer his question. He continued to cook the stinky tofu. After the stinky tofu was fried in the black turtle constellation wok, it was black with a tinge of yellow. When it was taken out of the wok, it was placed on a blue and white porcelain plate. Bright oil was poured over it, and the fragrant and spicy ingredients were poured over it. A bowl of spicy, stinky tofu, which looked quite pleasing to the eye, was completed. My work is done. After wiping his hands clean with a towel, Bufong raised his gaze and looked at the judge as he calmly said this. The judge, who was still angry, was stunned when he heard Bufong's words. It was done just like that? This was too fast. It hadn't even been an hour. The judge suppressed the anger in his heart, and his gaze landed on the spicy, stinky tofu that Bufong had prepared. Was this the thing that gave this kid the confidence to participate in the Magical Hand Conference? The judge took a deep breath, and the stench immediately rushed into his nose. He could not help but cough. It was really King Stinky. Fine. Since you've completed it, I'll take a good look at your work. The judge's gaze was filled with malice, and he was picky. He took out a jade talisman from his bosom. The jade talisman was yellow in color, and there were many patterns carved on it. As the judge poured his true energy into it, the jade talisman suddenly lit up. A magic array the size of a wash basin revolved from the jade talisman, and it floated in his hand. This is a magic array used to examine the spiritual energy content of the contestants' works. The higher the spiritual energy content, the stronger the human body's ability to absorb it. Moreover, this magic array can also determine the attributes of each work, as well as the amplification effect on the human body. No one can cheat under this magic array. The judge gnashed his teeth as he said this. His gaze landed on Bufong, and he wanted to see if Bufong was afraid. However, he was wrong. There was no expression on Bufong's face, and there was no change in it. Go ahead and test it. Bufong was very calm, but he was astonished that there was such a magic array. The judge coldly snorted, and he almost pinched his nose as he walked in front of the sweet, spicy, stinky tofu. The stinky smell wafted over, and it was mixed with the fragrance of the sauce. When these two strange smells mixed together, he was somewhat dumbfounded. Sweat appeared on the foreheads of the surrounding alchemists. They didn't dare to look at Buffon, and they all focused on refining the elixirs in their alchemy furnaces. The judge enveloped the dish with a magic array. The light emitted from the magic array was like the stars in the sky, and it revolved unceasingly, as though it was scanning the dish. As the magic array revolved, the light of the magic array became brighter and brighter. How was this possible? The judge's eyes widened, and his face was filled with disbelief. How could the magic array's light be so bright? This didn't make sense. This bowl of sh*t, could it really be comparable to a ninth-grade elixir? He didn't believe it, but the light of the magic array didn't seem fake. For a moment, he didn't even care about the stinky smell of the stinky tofu. He moved closer to the dish, and as he looked at the magic array's light, his expression changed unceasingly. Impossible. It's definitely fake. You can try it, and you'll know whether it's fake or not, Buffon said expressionlessly. How could I eat sh*t? The judge was enraged, and he glared at Buffon. Buffon was indifferent, and he calmly looked at the judge. Then, did I pass? Buffon asked. The judge was speechless. Did he pass? According to the reaction of the magic array, it was obvious that he had passed. However, in his heart, he didn't believe that this stinky thing could be comparable to a ninth-grade elixir. Judge, how could this guy pass the test? It's for the sake of fairness. Just eat it, and you must expose him. Judge, just eat it. He made such a stinky thing because he knew that you wouldn't dare to eat it. Once you eat it, his true colors will be revealed. That stinky thing caused us to be eliminated. Judge, you can't just let it go like this. Otherwise, we will sue the masters of the Magical Hand Conference. The faces of the contestants who were eliminated because of the stinky smell were filled with righteous indignation. The judge's face darkened when he heard their words. Damn it, it's easy for you to say. It's such a stinky thing. It's not like you're the one who ate it. The strange situation in the 8th arena attracted the attention of many people. Many of the spectators who were wandering around the arenas curiously looked over. They all saw this interesting scene. Although the 8th arena was stinky, the spectators were watching it with great interest. There was a contestant cooking sh*t in the arena, and the other contestants who were affected by it were not happy. They asked the judge to eat sh*t, f***ck. It's so exciting. Eat it. As a judge, you need to be fair. Eat it. Hurry up and eat it. Don't let this opportunistic person get away with it. Judge, we have faith in you. Eat it. The spectators, who didn't mind the matter being blown out of proportion, also started shouting. The judge's face darkened. It's easy for you to say, but if it were you, would you eat it? You only know how to talk nonsense. The judge wanted to cry in his heart. In the distance, there seemed to be a lord overseeing the Magical Hand Conference looking over. The judge's heart jumped. He hurriedly straightened his neck and said with a black face, Stop messing around. I will eat it, for the sake of fairness. Chapter 492. When the judge was forced to eat the stinky tofu, his heart refused to accept it. That stinky dish, no matter how good-looking it was, couldn't rouse anyone's appetite. However, when he picked up a piece of stinky tofu and stuffed it into his mouth under the gazes of tens of thousands of people, the delicious taste that suddenly blossomed in his mouth caused all the pores on his body to open up involuntarily. The dish that smelled super stinky was unexpectedly delicious when eaten. After the stinky tofu was bitten into pieces in his mouth, the rich fragrance and the spiritual energy in his mouth made him chew it uncontrollably. The judge widened his eyes and looked at Buffon. His eyes were filled with disbelief and shock. This time, he was really shocked. It was an extraordinary shock. He was shocked because the dish actually had the same effect as an elixir. Moreover, the effect was really not bad. It turned out that the magic array wasn't wrong. It was just that the dish was really strange. The eliminated doctors in the arena looked at the judge's stiff movements, and they couldn't bear to watch. It smelled so stinky. If it was eaten in their mouths, how terrible would it be? They suddenly sympathized with the judge. However, they knew that the main culprit was actually Bu Fong. This brat was definitely going to be kicked out of the ceremony this time. He actually dared to cause trouble in such a solemn ceremony. This kind of person must be punished severely. As a result, many of the doctors in the arena looked at Bu Fong with gloating eyes. If they couldn't advance to the next round, then Bu Fong, the culprit, shouldn't even think about advancing to the next round. Bu Fong was a little speechless when he saw those people's gazes. They didn't know the truth. The audience below the arena also couldn't bear to watch. They looked at the judge, who was frozen on the spot. They opened their mouths and wanted to ask him to give up. However, soon, all of them were startled. That was because the judge, who had eaten a piece of stinky tofu, moved. Everyone thought that the dish was going to vomit. However, the dish's next action was completely beyond their expectations. It didn't vomit. Instead, it moved its chopsticks, picked up another piece of stinky tofu, and stuffed it into its mouth. Is he crazy? Are you King addicted to it? Or is he crazy because of the stench? It's over. The judge is dumbfounded. This dish is poisonous. Everyone exclaimed in shock as they looked at the referee in disbelief. The referee kept stuffing the stinky tofu into his mouth. His crazed expression made him look like a hungry ghost that had been starving for months. Slurp, slurp. The arena was incomparably quiet. Everyone was stunned. The only sound that could be heard was the sound of the judge chewing on the stinky tofu. The sound sent chills down their spines. Everyone looked at the judge's table manners and gulped. An excited smile could be seen on the face of the judge as his eyes lit up. His chopsticks swiftly fell down and picked up a piece of stinky tofu. He took advantage of the moment when the juice splattered and stuffed it into his mouth. The juice stained the sides of his mouth, making him look a little comical. However, the judge stuck out his tongue and licked the juices off his tongue. Everyone stared blankly at the referee as he finished the stinky tofu in front of Bu Fong piece by piece. Burp. After the judge finished his food and licked his plate, he let out a satisfied burp. That burp carried a hint of fragrance and stench. Everyone frowned. Had the judge really gone mad? How is it? I should be considered to have passed, right? Bu Fong asked calmly. Looking at the plate that was licked clean, the corners of Bu Fong's mouth curled up. He was quite confident. His confident look made the doctors in the arena particularly unhappy. What the hell was this brat acting so arrogantly for? The judge smacked his lips and looked at Bu Fong in surprise. I didn't expect that the dish smelled so bad. However, it was unexpectedly delicious. Delicious? The judge's words stunned many people. They looked at the judge as if they were looking at an idiot. Did he think that their noses were fake? That thing was obviously so stinky. However, they were quickly stunned. The judge's appearance when he ate was indeed the same as when he ate delicious food. Was that thing really that delicious? Everyone was a little shaken. What is the name of this dish? The judge asked curiously. Fragrant, spicy, stinky tofu. Bu Fong looked at the judge and replied. Then, under the puzzled gaze of the judge, he lifted the board in front of the bronze platform and placed it on it. Fragrant, spicy, stinky tofu, a product of the Cloud Mist restaurant. It was cooked by head chef Bu Fong. The taste is excellent. Everyone is welcome to come and try it. Bu Fong pointed at the 4 big words on the board. His face was expressionless as he made an advertisement in an incomparably stiff manner. Puffed. Everyone was stunned. They were a little dumbfounded. What the hell was this? Was it really good to make such a blunt advertisement? The judge was also stunned. Then, he suddenly laughed out loud. A playful expression appeared on his face. I'm suddenly curious about the location of your restaurant. When I have time, I will definitely go and support you. This stinky tofu's taste is really unique. After saying that, he licked his lips. So I passed the preliminary round? Bu Fong asked. That's right. You passed the first round of the preliminary round. In a while, there will be 2 elimination rounds. If you pass both rounds, you will be able to advance to the next round. I wish you good luck. The judge put away the magic array and said with a smile. Bu Fong was stunned. There were still 2 elimination rounds, as expected of the Pill Palace's grand ceremony. The competition system was really a little complicated. However, he understood. After all, there were too many participants. These elimination rounds were just to filter out those who wanted to fish in troubled waters. The remaining 2 elimination rounds will be held tomorrow. I hope you can come and participate. However, you're not allowed to cook this stinky dish tomorrow. It will affect the performance of the other participants, the judge said in a serious tone. The surrounding doctors had tears streaming down their faces. How could it affect their performance? That stinky smell was a destructive blow. I understand. I will make stinky tofu tomorrow. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth curled up as he nodded. Then he put away the black turtle constellation wok, the dragon bone kitchen knife, and the other items. He carried the giant board and walked down the stage. The audience below the stage subconsciously made way for him as they watched the youth carrying the board disappear into the crowd. Judge, how can you let him go just like that? Some people were unconvinced and angrily shouted at the judge. The judge was also stubborn. He coldly glanced at the doctor who spoke and said, "Why? Are you unconvinced? Are you the judge or am I the judge?" The doctors were instantly stunned. "I will go to the judges and sue you." The doctors who were unconvinced shouted angrily. They didn't believe that a dish could have the same effect as an elixir. The judge was definitely covering up for that kid. The judge definitely had an unspeakable relationship with that kid. When the judge heard this, he was so angry that he laughed. A bunch of weak-willed fellows. Even after being eliminated, you're still finding all kinds of excuses. Go and sue me. I'm standing right here. Go and King sue me. No matter what, I am a one-cloud alchemist from the Pill Tower. Do you think I'm afraid of you? The judge was also a hot-tempered person. He glared at the group of doctors. The identity of a one-cloud alchemist from the Pill Tower caused quite a few people to be shocked. The faces of the doctors were gloomy. In the end, they flung their sleeves and left. Oomph. What kind of joke is that? The judge looked at the back of the group of people leaving and coldly snorted. He smacked his lips and savored the taste of the stinky tofu. After the doctors left, the alchemists on the stage finally completed their refinement one after another. However, the faces of these alchemists were covered with sweat. The judge held the jade talisman and walked toward the position of each alchemist. He started to inspect the finished products. The quality is too low. Fail. It doesn't reach the level of a 9th grade elixir. Fail. What kind of plaything is this? Fail. As he inspected the pills, the judge's calm expression changed. Sweat appeared on his forehead. That was because there were so many alchemists, but the elixirs refined by them reached the level of a 9th grade elixir. Only a few. This was completely inconceivable. According to the judge's judgment, at least half of the alchemists in the stage should have reached the level of qualified to participate in the elimination round. When all the elixirs were inspected, the judge was on the verge of crying. Among the 50 participants, other than Bu Fong, there were only 3 people who passed. The influence of the stinky tofu was terrifying. The faces of the 3 alchemists who passed were filled with fear. They had almost failed. Fortunately, their alchemy furnaces were more powerful. The expressions of the audience below the stage were all very interesting. There were more than 50 people on the stage, but only 4 people passed. This was a little funny. The cruelest elimination round in history. Although the judge's face was black, he had no other choice. He could only brace himself and report the results of the elimination round. As for the 8th stage, after cleaning up, the elimination round continued. There were many participants. There were about 7 to 8 rounds of elimination in one stage. It took about a day. As for the 8th stage, the situation was much more normal. About a dozen people passed. This also made people realize that the reason for everything was indeed because of the stinky tofu. The participants who competed with Bu Fong were so depressed that they wanted to vomit blood. Did you guys hear? This time, only 4 out of 50 people qualified for the competition at the 8th arena. Is it too difficult? Or are those people trash? No. You're all wrong. I heard it was because of a chef. Not long after the end of the competition, the news spread. How could such an explosive event not spread? Bu Fong's fame also spread for the first time. although many people didn't know Bu Fong's name. However, they remembered a young man carrying a signboard. The next time he competed, there would definitely be more people paying attention. Nangong Wuk and Nangong Wan had also passed the preliminary round, and when they heard these rumors, they laughed carefreely. After all, he was Owner Bu. A moment of silence for those who competed with Owner Bu. It was unknown how many people would suffer the next day, but it was said that the referee had already banned that person from cooking that stinky dish in the arena. This was probably the funniest moment in the history of the Magical Hand Conference. Chapter 493. Creek. Bu Fong pushed open the bronze gate of the Cloud Mist restaurant. As soon as he entered the restaurant, he saw a pair of pitch-black eyes staring at him. He was sitting in the restaurant, staring at him. The Lord Go was sleeping soundly under the Path Understanding tree. This plump dog liked to sleep when he had nothing better to do. This wasn't out of Bu Fong's expectations. When you saw Bu Fong return, a bright light flashed in her eyes. Bu Fong, I'm hungry. You opened her mouth and said coldly. Bu Fong was taken aback. He nodded his head expressionlessly and looked at you. Then, he turned around and entered the kitchen. After a short while, an aroma wafted out of the kitchen. As Bu Fong cooked, he thought about the dish he should use in the elimination round the next day. What should he use? He wasn't allowed to use the stinky tofu. This made Bu Fong feel that it was a pity. He had planned to use the stinky tofu until the end. Although the stinky tofu was smelly, its taste was really good. There was a sharp contrast, which was why Bu Fong always chose the stinky tofu. As long as there was a contrast, people would feel disappointed. The smell of the stinky tofu was the most enchanting. It was just like when a person was starved to the extreme, everything would be fragrant. The stinky tofu's principle was somewhat similar. Sizzle. As the wok continued to stir, the flames soared into the sky. Accompanied by the drifting spiritual energy, the fragrance pervaded the air. The wok was flipped, and the dragon blood rice was boiling. When the heat was suppressed, the steaming dragon blood rice was ready. Xiaopi was lying on Bu Fong's shoulder. This little fellow had become more well-behaved recently. Most of the time, it was sleeping. Occasionally, it would open its eyes and roll around. It was probably because this little guy had eaten the crystal source purple essence. After cooking the dragon blood rice, Bu Fong began to make the sweet-in sour ribs. This was prepared for the Lord Go. If there was a dish that Bu Fong was most familiar with besides the egg-fried rice, it would be the sweet-in sour ribs. After all, there was a black dog that loved to eat sweet-in sour ribs. After placing the two dishes on the restaurant's dining table, Bu Fong returned to the kitchen without paying any attention to the man and dog who were happily eating from the porcelain plates. He started to think about the dishes he would prepare the next day. What should I do tomorrow? Bu Fong fiddled with the golden dragon bone kitchen knife in his hand. The golden dragon bone kitchen knife kept spinning in his hand. Xiaobai stood at the door. His purple eyes flickered from time to time. He looked at Bu Fong's body and occasionally raised his hand to scratch his round head. Suddenly, Bu Fong seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes lit up. Since smelly things aren't allowed to be made, I will make something fragrant. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth curled up as an idea came to his mind. Since the extremely smelly stinky tofu was prohibited from being made, he would choose an extremely fragrant dish for his next dish. This way, it would be easier to attract people's attention and spread the fame of the Cloud Mist restaurant. The golden dragon bone kitchen knife moved along Bu Fong's fingers and landed in his palm. He held it tightly. When Bu Fong thought about the dish he was going to make, he felt much more relaxed. After practicing the Overlord 13 blades, he cooked a dish of red braised meat. He walked into the restaurant and ate with you and the Lord Go. After eating and drinking their fill, you and the Lord Go went to sleep. Bu Fong also returned to his room and took a shower. The dense steam blurred his eyes, causing him to involuntarily heave a sigh of relief. The next day, early in the morning, Bu Fong woke up early and prepared breakfast for you and the Lord Go. After he finished preparing breakfast, he opened a restaurant for business. As the owner of a small restaurant, he wouldn't give up any opening hours. After all, the crystals he earned would be converted into his cultivation. However, there were still many customers who appeared in the restaurant early in the morning. These customers knew that Bufong had participated in the Magical Hand Conference, and they all cheered for Bufong, even though they weren't optimistic about Bufong's chances. After all, Bufong had challenged an alchemist as a chef. It wasn't easy for him to enter the knockout round, so he couldn't ask for too much. Nangong Wan and Nangong Wuk didn't come this morning. Thus, after opening the restaurant for a while, Bufong closed the door. He clasped his hands behind his back and left the restaurant to participate in the knockout round. This woman, walked beside Bufong with her bare feet. She didn't utter a single word, and her face was expressionless. Bufong turned his head and looked at the woman. He didn't know what to say. Perhaps this woman was bored of staying in the store. This was the first time Nethery had seen the bustling heavenly mist city, and her eyes, which were as tranquil as an ancient well, were filled with many ripples. She was quite curious about the tall bronze buildings and the spirit beast carriages that flew by. You should follow me and don't run around. I will bring you back after I finish the competition. Bufong felt that he had to warn you. Otherwise, she wouldn't even know how she got lost. You just quietly looked at Bufong and didn't do anything else after hearing Bufong's advice. The two of them rushed toward the heavenly mist city's central plaza. The central plaza was still bustling with noise and excitement. It seemed like the preliminary round had ended and the knockout round had begun. Thus, there were many spectators, and it was even more lively than the first day of the preliminary round. You was very beautiful, and no matter where a beautiful woman appeared, she would always become the center of attention. At this moment, Bufong had such a feeling. He had kept a low profile the day before, but today, he had become the center of attention. Of course, it could be said that he was the center of attention. Most of the people's gazes fell on you, who had long, black hair. This woman was really beautiful. Her straight, jade-like legs attracted many people's gazes. Nangong Wan and Nangong Wuk easily found Bufong. When Nangong Wuk saw you, his whole body trembled. He turned around and was about to run away. However, when you shot him a glance, he froze on the spot. In his heart, he was already afraid of this woman. After all, he knew how terrifying you was. Nangong Wan smiled gently. Although you was beautiful, she wasn't ugly. She had the confidence of a beautiful woman. When the two beautiful women appeared, the surrounding crowd burst into an uproar. Bufong wasn't used to this kind of attention, and he furrowed his brows. Old Boo, this knockout round is different from the preliminary round. After all, it is the knockout round, and it will be even more cruel. Everyone will bring out some of their true abilities, so you must not be careless. Nangong Wuk pulled Bufong to the side and earnestly said, I'm looking forward to seeing the expressions on those old fellows' faces when a chef like you enters the top 50 of the Magical Hand Conference. Bufong nodded his head. This matter was related to the mission, so Bufong naturally wouldn't be careless. More and more people gathered in the plaza, and warships gradually appeared in the sky. They brought with them a berserk pressure and spiritual energy. These warships stopped in the plaza, and many people walked out of them. These people were the experts of the Heavenly Pill City and the Heavenly Shine City. Bufong found his arena. There were also 8 arenas, and this time, Bufong was going to compete in the 8th arena. It was quite a coincidence. After yesterday's preliminary round, the number of participants had decreased by more than half. Today's knockout round would determine the top 100 participants, and they would participate in the semifinals. When Bufong arrived at the 8th arena, he saw the judge standing in the arena. He was the same judge as the day before. However, on this day, the judge's face was somewhat dark. He had also seen Bufong. Yesterday, he was in charge of the 8th arena, and only 4 people advanced to the semifinals. Because of this, he was scolded by the person in charge of the arena. He originally thought that he wouldn't meet Bufong today, but he didn't expect that he would still meet him. This caused him to feel a little sad. It's fine. This time, the chef won't cook that stinky dish again, and it won't affect the others. The judge comforted himself in his heart. Bufong nodded at the judge, then walked up the arena and walked toward his bronze arena. During the knockout round, the participant's strength would increase significantly, and the purpose of a knockout round was to eliminate those who wanted to fish in troubled waters. When the judge saw the contestant for this round, he felt a little more confident and felt a lot more at ease. He was a disciple of the heavenly Pill City's Pill Tower, and he was a genius alchemist. He was a disciple of an alchemy grandmaster in the heavenly Shine City, and his strength was not bad. The more the judge looked at the participants, the more confident he became. These people were famous in the alchemy world, and their mental force must be very strong, and they wouldn't be easily affected. Therefore, even if that kid played any tricks this time, the incident yesterday wouldn't happen again. Of course, even though the judge was confident, he was still a little worried when he saw the expressionless Bufong, who was not far from him. Why did his manly instincts tell him that that kid was going to cause trouble? Bufong stood in front of his bronze arena, and a green smoke curled around him. The black turtle constellation Wok appeared, and it smashed onto his bronze arena, causing it to cave in. The dragon bone kitchen knife, the celadon bowl, and the other items were taken out in an orderly manner. The judge, who had been staring at Bufong, couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. As expected, that kid was going to cook again. When he saw Bufong take out another clay jar, his nostrils flared and his pupils shrank. What happened to the trust between people? Didn't they agree not to cook stinky tofu? Why did this clay jar look so familiar? The judge became anxious, and he walked in front of Bufong. This participant, didn't we agree not to cook stinky tofu? The judge took a deep breath and said. Bufong was taken aback, and he raised his head to look at the judge with a strange expression. I know. That's why I didn't plan to cook stinky tofu this time. Bufong looked at the judge with a puzzled expression, and he casually opened the lid of the clay jar. Indeed, this time, there wasn't any stench coming out of the clay jar. The judge wrinkled his nose, and his heart finally calmed down. Next, he saw Bufong pour the contents of the clay jar into the black turtle constellation wok. The gurgling liquid was golden oil, a whole wok of oil. Was this kid going to cook a deep-fried dish this time? The judge thought to himself. Since the extremely smelly stinky tofu wasn't allowed to be cooked, Bufong chose to cook the extremely fragrant enhanced oyster pancake. Chapter 494. That's right. This time, Bufong was going to make an oyster pancake. The 10 miles fragrant oyster pancake. If the stinkiest thing was the stinky tofu, then the most fragrant thing was the oyster pancake. Fried food was already very fragrant, especially when it was a dish like the oyster pancake. This was also the decision that Bufong made after thinking about it. Of course, if it was an ordinary oyster pancake, it would be difficult for it to amaze the crowd in the elimination round. Thus, Bufong modified and filtered the ingredients so that the effects of the oyster pancake would reach an astonishing level. Very good. As long as you don't make that stinky dish, it will be fine. Although the taste is good, the stench is really unbearable. The judge looked at it for a long time and didn't find anything wrong with it. The dish this time should be a very ordinary dish. As long as it didn't emit a stench, it shouldn't affect the contestants too much. The surrounding contestants all went up the stage and stood in front of their respective bronze platforms. They were all prepared to participate in the competition. Everyone looked at Bufong curiously. In the elimination round, most doctors, poison masters, and others were eliminated. After all, compared to alchemists, their innate disadvantage was too great. However, as a chef, Bufong was still standing on the stage. This surprised many people. Look, it's the chef from yesterday. It's the elimination round. I'm really looking forward to what dish he will make. The thing he made yesterday was simply too stinky. I'm suddenly really looking forward to him advancing to the next round. Don't you guys think that it'll be a funny scene if a chef manages to get into the top 50? Perhaps it was because of Bufong, but there were many spectators in the 8th arena. These spectators were the ones who watched the competition yesterday. Perhaps they heard the news and rushed over. They heard that a chef was participating in the Magical Hand Conference. How could they not come over to witness such a thing? The contestants on the stage were also somewhat surprised. It was just the elimination round, So why would there be so many people crowding around? These participants had all heard of Bufong's achievements and knew that Bufong was a chef. Many of them sneered at him. A chef participating in the Magical Hand Conference. Was he looking down on alchemists? How could a truly powerful alchemist be so easily influenced during alchemy? With them here, this chef can forget about advancing to the next level. Many of the contestants in the arena were sharpening their knives, casting malicious gazes at Bufong. He's just a chef, a clown trying to please the crowd, said a man in a green robe as he glanced disdainfully at Bufong. As an alchemist from the heavenly Pill City's Pill Pagoda, he had the right to be arrogant. If an alchemist couldn't even be compared to a chef, what difference was there between him and a salted fish? There were many genius alchemists on the stage this time, and he was one of them. A chef dared to challenge the alchemist's domain. They would never look at such a person in the eye, because the two of them weren't even on the same level. There was no way for them to compare. Compared to the disdainful gazes of the other alchemists, Bufong was calmly inspecting the golden dragon bone kitchen knife. He blew a breath of air at the kitchen knife, which emitted a sharp aura. Soon, the judge walked to the center of the stage and announced the rules of the first elimination round. This is the first elimination round after the preliminary round. Compared to the preliminary round, the elimination round's rules are much stricter. Moreover, the requirements for the contestants' abilities are much higher. The judge took a deep breath as he looked at the crowd. He knew that there were many genius alchemists on the stage, but there were some words that he had to say. In this elimination round, every contestant has 1 hour. Within 1 hour, they must refine a 9th-grade elixir. Moreover, their elixir must reach the middle level of the 9th-grade elixir. If they can't reach the middle level, they will be considered to have failed. When the time comes, a professional testing array will be used to examine each contestant's elixir. Therefore, every contestant needs to display their abilities seriously. To refine a 9th-grade elixir in 1 hour. The difficulty wasn't ordinary. Many people sucked in a breath of cold air. They knew that the elimination round was difficult, but they didn't expect it to be so difficult. Even some 1-mark alchemists would find it difficult to refine a 9th-grade elixir in 1 hour. Moreover, there were many contestants who weren't even 1-mark alchemists. Now, the 1-hour countdown begins. As the deafening sound of the bell resounded throughout the central square, the atmosphere in the square changed. Boom, boom. In an instant, everyone's nerves tensed up as they displayed their skills. Tens of thousands of flames surged violently. Alchemic fire, spirit fire, all of them soared into the sky. When Bufong spat out a mouthful of 10,000 bestial flames, the alchemic fire in the 8th arena trembled. Even though everyone already knew that this chef used a heaven and earth obsidian flame to cook when they saw it with their own eyes, they still felt their balls aching. Envy, jealousy, and hatred. Alchemists had high requirements for flames. If an alchemist possessed a heaven and earth obsidian flame, the increase in their abilities would be indescribable. What a reckless waste of God's gift. Many people muttered in their hearts, secretly hating Bufong. The golden 10,000 bestial flames was like a scorching sun. It danced unceasingly as it drilled into the black turtle constellation wok and began to burn. The oil in the wok quickly became boiling hot. In the process of heating the oil, Bufong displayed his exquisite knife skills. With a shake of his hand, the golden dragon bone kitchen knife jumped into his palm and spun continuously. It seemed as though the knife was cutting through the air, causing many people to be dazzled. He took out an 8th-grade spirit herb. With a twirl of the kitchen knife, the radish-like spirit herb was cut into strips. The strips that were cut seemed to be dancing as they fell onto the porcelain plate in an orderly manner under the control of his true energy. The audience below the stage immediately cried out in surprise. In heavenly Mist City, they rarely saw a restaurant, let alone a chef cooking. That dazzling scene had indeed stunned all of them. Bufong's knife skills were as fast as lightning. Their eyes couldn't keep up with it. They could only hear the rhythmic sounds of chopping as the ingredients were cut into pieces. Moreover, every piece was cut neatly. As Bufong's knife skills were displayed, the audience below the stage continuously cried out in surprise. The alchemists in the surroundings instantly felt their balls aching. What the hell? You guys are screaming like this just by cutting vegetables. Can't you guys be a little quieter? However, at this moment, they couldn't open their mouths because they had also started refining their elixirs. Refining elixirs was different from cooking. What they needed to do was to extract the essences of the ingredients and fuse them in different proportions. Finally, they would start to form the elixir. Every step required arduous training before they could achieve it. Thus, they had to maintain a high level of concentration. It was also the first time that the judge saw Bufong's knife skills. That dazzling method made him unable to help but cry out in surprise. However, he was, after all, the judge. Other than paying attention to the contestants, he also had to maintain order on the stage. After crying out in surprise, he began to press his palm toward the audience below the stage. The audience quieted down. Everyone was excited as they watched Bufong cook. It was their first time seeing a chef cook, and they felt that it was a novel experience. As the competition progressed, more and more spectators gathered in the 8th arena. Bufong placed his hand on top of the wok of oil. After feeling the slightly hot temperature of the oil, he slightly nodded his head. Then, he poured the rice milk over the oyster pancake and placed it into the wok of oil. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. In an instant, the sound of sizzling resounded. The wok of oil began to boil, and white bubbles rose. The true energy in Bufong's body revolved and was directed into the black turtle constellation wok. Instantly, the hot oil in the wok began to spin, as if it had turned into a whirlpool. The oyster pancake that was being fried in the wok also underwent a transformation. The oyster pancake seemed to have blossomed, and spirit energy shot up into the sky. It was like many tentacles were spiraling around, like a blooming epiphyllum, emitting rays of light. Wow, it's so beautiful. So this is cooking. It's so cool. It smells so good. Do you guys smell it? The audience below the stage once again let out cries of surprise. A wave of fragrance was emitted from the wok of oil. That fragrance was too rich, and as the oil and gas evaporated and rose, it instantly filled the entire arena. Almost everyone in the audience smelled it, and their faces became intoxicated as they smacked their lips. That was an indescribable fragrance. It instantly drilled into the tip of one's nose like silk, enticing their taste buds and causing their hair to stand on end. They had never smelled such a fragrant smell before. Pill fragrance? No, even the fragrance of a spirit pill was not on the same level as this fragrance. What was that thing? Since the audience could smell it, the judge could smell it as well. He was very pleased. Sure enough, this kid did not cook the stinky dish from yesterday. This fragrance was so good. Smelling the fragrance, the judge could not help but smack his lips. His saliva secreted faster, and his gaze involuntarily swept toward Bufong's position. This fragrance, it was simply too fragrant. All of a sudden, the judge's body stiffened, and his expression changed. His entire body trembled as he looked at Bufong. Bang! An explosion resounded. In the distance, the sound of a medicine furnace exploding resounded. A doctor had a face full of annoyance as he pulled his hair. His eyes were bloodshot. Fragrance! That damned fragrance! Why was it so fragrant? Smelling this fragrance, the doctor felt his mind become chaotic. The medicine furnace directly exploded, and all his efforts were in vain. So infuriating. It was not only him. As the fragrance gradually enveloped the arena, the atmosphere in the arena changed. The judge's eyes shrank, and he looked around in fear. As expected, the expressions of many contestants became somewhat distorted. The fragrance drilled into the nostrils of the alchemists like silk threads, stirring up the desire for delicious food in their hearts. They rarely smelled such a fragrant aroma. So how could they resist the temptation of this aroma? Bang! 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 The sound of medicine furnaces and pill furnaces exploding resounded in the arena. This time, Not only was the judge shocked, but even the audience below recovered from the fragrance. Their faces were filled with shock as they looked at the situation on the stage. Bufong was very calm, and he focused all his attention on frying the oyster pancake. With a wave of his hand, the golden oyster pancake flew out of the wok and landed on the porcelain plate. The golden dragon bone kitchen knife spun, and in an instant, it gently cut the center of the oyster pancake. The golden skin of the oyster pancake was cut open, and the white and tender ingredients inside were exposed. The plump oyster also came out, and the fragrance suddenly soared. My work, the enhanced oyster pancake, is done. Twirling the knife around, the golden dragon bone kitchen knife was held in Bufong's hand. Bufong raised his head and said calmly. As soon as he finished speaking, the sound of several furnaces exploding resounded. Chapter 495. As expected of the genius alchemists of Heavenly Pill City and Heavenly Shine City, they did not disappoint him. The concentration of this spiritual energy is so high. It's even stronger than the stinky tofu from yesterday. The judge took a deep breath, his face filled with astonishment. The judge was also speechless. He finally knew why he felt that something was wrong in his heart. In the end, there were less than 5 people left on the stage, including the expressionless Bufong. That was embarrassing. The audience looked at the judge, whose mouth was covered in oil and whose eyes were wide open, with envy and jealousy in their hearts. The fragrance lingered on the tip of their noses, as if it was stirring up the most primitive desire in their hearts. It seemed like they had to go and take a look. Yesterday, there were 4 people who had successfully advanced. Not only the alchemists on the stage who were prepared to watch a joke were stunned, even the audience below the stage were dumbstruck. The fragrance of the dish was like poison, causing their hearts to tremble and their minds to be disturbed. Judge, my work is done. Please inspect it. Bufong was indifferent to those voices. His gaze landed on the judge, who looked as if he wanted to cry, but had no tears. Oyster pancake, a fragrant oyster pancake, Bufong answered seriously. In the end, he was given such a show today. It's really delicious. However, I have to say that while it's delicious, it maintains the effects of a 9th grade elixir. If I'm not wrong, this oyster pancake should be able to quickly recover true energy, right? Since I didn't consume much true energy, it's not obvious. However, I can feel that my true energy is circulating 5 times faster than usual. In other words, this oyster pancake can recover true energy 5 times faster. Bufong was very confident in the oyster pancake. If it really didn't work, he would let Xiaopi cook in a wok of oil. That way, the effects of the oyster pancake would be enhanced. The judge took a deep breath and walked to the bronze platform where Bufong was. The closer he got, the stronger the fragrance became. It seemed like he was attracted by the beauty and fragrance of the oyster pancake. The sadness in the judge's heart dissipated a lot. The last alchemist, whose furnace had exploded, was furious. He grabbed the broken furnace and threw it on the ground. His face was distorted with anger. Bang, bang, bang. The furnace exploded. Another furnace explosion. But what the hell was this extremely rich aroma that people couldn't help but inhale? Referee, what did that mean? We want to lodge a complaint against him. He had almost forgotten about the effects of the oyster pancake. He was only reminiscing about the taste of the oyster pancake. That feeling was as wonderful and joyful as the first time he entered the bridal chamber. On their pitch-black faces, their eyes were sparkling with grief and indignation. The referee didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This kid was taking the opportunity to advertise with a signboard. Is this thing that awesome? On the porcelain plate was a golden steamed bun-shaped dish. However, when he used the array to examine the elixir, sure enough, this kid was stirring up trouble. Even 9th grade chi amassing pill might not be able to achieve the effect of 5 times the true chi recovery. Good heavens! They had never experienced such a feeling before. It was simply torture. The referee wasn't the only one who was stunned. All of the spectators watching the elimination round were stunned as well. The group of alchemists was rendered speechless. When the audience saw Bu Fong's actions, they couldn't help but open their mouths and drool. Their eyes were glued to the dish. The alchemists were enraged. The skin in the middle of the dish was split open. Surging hot air and spiritual energy rose from it. There seemed to be a faint radiance circulating around it. It was extremely beautiful. Just as he was thinking about it, an alchemist's furnace exploded. Once again, Bu Fong expressionlessly made this stiff advertisement, which made him look so comical. Damn it! This disgusting referee must be reported later. Damn it! My saliva is flowing out from watching this. If you're so awesome, why don't you ascend to the heavens? What kind of concept was 5 times? If a supreme being expert only had 30% of his true energy left after eating the oyster pancake, he would be able to fully recover his true energy in the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. Just as everyone was stunned by the referee's exclamation, Bu Fong expressionlessly took out a huge signboard from the system's dimensional storage. However, even though he was cursing in his heart, he still took out a light yellow jade talisman. His true energy surged into the jade talisman, and it immediately formed a magic array. That magic array enveloped the oyster pancake. Specks of star-like radiance scattered down and lingered around the oyster pancake. The radiance became more and more dazzling. Cloud Mist Restaurant? Could it be the restaurant where this chef was working? He felt as though he was about to go crazy. It looks really delicious. At this moment, the last 3 alchemists had finished refining their elixirs. This effect was too terrifying. The other alchemists also angrily denounced Bu Fong. It seemed like this round wouldn't be any worse than the previous day. There were still 4 people who advanced to the next round. If there was no comparison, there would be no harm. The referee felt that he was already numb. He was actually pleased that 4 people advanced to the next round. He must be crazy. The referee opened his blurry eyes and said to Bu Fong with a red face. Yesterday, he had warned him not to cook stinky tofu. The stinky smell of the stinky tofu would affect the performance of the other contestants on the stage. He felt that it would be good enough if 3 people advanced to the next round. Slurp, slurp. Damn it. They realized that they had completely underestimated this chef. It turned out that chefs were such sinister existences. Bang! He knew that he would be scolded again today. How could a fried bun be so awesome? With a bang, it smashed onto the bronze platform. Did the Heavenly Mist City's Cloud Mist Restaurant sell this oyster pancake? The referee's face turned red, and he let out a snort. The audience below the stage clamored unceasingly, and they were extremely excited. There was another good show to watch. They simply want to watch a good show. However, the audience couldn't laugh. This time, they were really attracted by the advertisement. The referee didn't say anything. He picked up his chopsticks and directly picked up the oyster pancake. At this moment, the one who felt the most hopeless was the referee. He looked at the contestants whose furnaces exploded and were eliminated, and he almost cried. The referee was so moved that he almost cried. This kind of delicacy, it was simply irresistible. Cough, cough. I hereby announce that contestant Bu Fong advanced to the next round of the elimination round. For hours later, prepare for the second round. What is the name of today's dish? The referee asked. They looked at Bu Fong, wishing that they could catch the instigator and give him a good beating. They were really angry. This effect had even exceeded the scope of a 9th grade elixir. The continuous sounds of furnaces exploding resounded throughout the entire stage. Was this chef sent by the heavens to punish him? The referee's heart was filled with tears. His stomach couldn't help but let out a rumbling sound. While he was persisting in refining the elixir, his face became red. I have never eaten a real dish except for the grain liberation pill in my life. I really want to eat it. Bu Fong obediently agreed. He didn't cry or make a fuss. He even felt that this little fellow was sensible. The referee looked at Bu Fong deeply. 10 miles fragrance. It should be called 10 miles fried furnace oyster pancake. Even these alchemists weren't in a good state at this moment. Their foreheads were covered with fine beads of sweat. After all, even when Bufong cooked the stinky tofu, there weren't so many furnaces exploding. 5 times the effect. Pill powder swirled around the entire arena, and a burnt stench filled the air. Some of the people whose furnaces had exploded were unlucky enough to be affected by the explosion of their furnaces. Their entire bodies turned into black cats. Their faces were extremely black, and there was even smoke coming out of their mouths. There was no problem with the array, and there was no problem with the effect. It was just that when he cooked the dish, the fragrance became a little more fragrant. You guys didn't even have the ability to resist. So how can you blame others? The fragrance of a real elixir is not any weaker than the fragrance of the dish. At that time, what excuses can you find? The referee asked domineeringly. This would also affect the other contestants. Moreover, the referee realized that this effect was even more terrifying than the stinky tofu. However, with yesterday's experience, the referee was a lot more relaxed. Bufong was taken aback, and he kept his board. So, there were 2 more rounds of elimination. However, it didn't matter. With the oyster pancake in hand, advancing to the next round wouldn't be a problem. There wasn't the exquisite, spicy, stinky tofu from yesterday. This time, the dish was just a piece of oyster pancake. However, it was beautiful and not pretentious. His appearance caused the audience to feel a chill down their spines. However, they couldn't help but admit that the thing cooked by Bufong was really fragrant. Only the true genius alchemists from Heavenly Pill City and Heavenly Shine City were persevering. Was the 8th arena a paradise for furnaces exploding? Yesterday, there were many furnaces exploding. Today, there were so many furnaces exploding. This was simply too exciting. Just by looking at the density of the spiritual energy, one could tell that it wasn't any weaker than a 9th grade elixir. Moreover, it was a 9th grade elixir, a mid-grade elixir. 10 Miles fragrant oyster pancake, the Cloud Mist restaurant's newest dish. It can be taken away or eaten on the spot. Each person is limited to 2 pieces, and the effects can be stacked. First come, first served. The sounds of furnaces exploding were still going on, forming a rhythmic tune. You really didn't make the stinky tofu today, and it didn't emit a disgusting stench. Everyone was in an uproar. They looked at the alchemists and doctors whose furnaces had exploded. Soon, the oyster pancake was finished by the referee. After eating it, the referee bit his chopsticks and licked the delicious taste. Crack! They surrounded Bufong. They were extremely unhappy with Bufong's advancement. A smile appeared on the referee's face. The referee bit down on a plump piece of the oyster. When the oyster entered his mouth, the aroma of the sea instantly washed over the referee's body. How many alchemist furnaces had exploded? Because of this thing, they were annoyed, and their eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. They were extremely focused. As the contestants were defeated one after another, the number of people left in the arena gradually decreased. It was too refreshing. It was too delicious. The crisp sound of the oyster pancake skin being bitten into pieces rang out. That sound seemed to have a magical power as it lingered in everyone's ears. Everyone couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.